Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Dan Markel. Dan Markel was born in Toronto, Canada. In 1970, he was a highly intelligent and successful individual. Dan attended several universities, including those in Jerusalem and Cambridge, before earning his law degree from Harvard in 2001. After spending a few years working as a clerk in a law firm, he received an exciting opportunity in 2005. Florida State University was seeking someone with his qualifications to join their law school, and he accepted the position. Dan was well suited for this role because he enjoyed teaching and had a passion for criminal law. While teaching various legal subjects at the university, he also dedicated time to writing numerous papers on criminal law. Dan's life took a positive turn when he met his new partner, Wendy Adelson, on a dating site for single Jews. At the time, Dan was 33 and Wendy was 26, and they seemed to get along very well. Both shared a passion for criminal law and later taught at the University of Florida. Their relationship progressed rapidly, leading them to get engaged and married on February 26, 2006. They enjoyed a fulfilling life together, each having their dream jobs and good incomes. In 2009, they welcomed their first son, followed by a second in 2010. Everything seemed wonderful until 2012, when their relationship deteriorated, resulting in their separation before their divorce. The couple kept the reason for their separation a secret, leaving others unsure why their marriage ended so abruptly. By 2013, they were divorced. One day, Dan returned from a business trip to find that most of the furniture in the house was gone. Wendy had taken most of their belongings with her, leaving only a few items behind. The process was quick. It only took her a day and a night to move. Her quick action to clean up the house showed how bad their marriage had become. Wendy left divorce papers on the mattress. Wendy seemed determined to hurt Dan as much as possible. She changed the children's last names to hers, and even changed one of her sons' names. Wendy tried to erase everything related to Dan from her life and the lives of her children. Trying to cut a father out of her children's lives could be considered cruel and vengeful. In 2014, Dan and Wendy were living separate lives. Wendy had started writing and attempted to publish a law book on human trafficking. However, her approach was different from Dan's, and the book was a complete failure, receiving harsh criticism. As a result, few people were interested in buying it. On July 18, 2014, Dan went to Wendy's house to pick up their kids for preschool, which was part of his usual routine. He also went to the gym and stopped by a few stores. But nothing out of the ordinary happened that day, until he returned home around 11:00 a.m. When he arrived, he saw that someone was waiting for him. Although the details of his phone conversation at that moment were not public, it was reported that the person waiting for Dan was there to ambush him. Before Dan could open the car door to get into the house, a bullet wounded him. A neighbor heard the explosion and ran out. Dan was still in the driver's seat. Surrounded by broken glass, the neighbor quickly called 911. The neighbor later reported seeing a car pull into the driveway just before the gunshots. He saw Dan in the front seat, in critical condition, still alive, but unable to call the police. When the ambulance was called, the police tried to get information from a neighbor. The only thing the neighbor saw was a silver Toyota Prius leaving the area right after the gunshots. The ambulance then arrived, and Dan was taken to the nearest hospital. Unfortunately, his injuries were quite serious, and Dan passed away in the intensive care unit 14 hours later. Dan, a man who seemed to have no enemies and was loved by everyone, was shot dead in his own driveway. A memorial service was later held for Dan Markel, attended by friends, family, and students who wanted to express their love, respect, and admiration for the professor. The main task of the police was to find a silver Toyota Prius that could be linked to the case, provided by a neighbor. At the same time, the police also began questioning his ex-wife, Wendy Adelson. She was brought in for questioning on the same day Dan was killed. As Wendy entered the interrogation room, she received a voice message from a friend who was a real estate staff. The message stated that there had been a shooting near where Wendy used to live and that she hoped Wendy was okay. The voice message continued, explaining that there had been a shooting at Wendy's old home and that her ex-husband was seriously injured and would likely not survive. Wendy was very upset and began to cry. She said that she had emailed Dan that morning and that everything seemed fine. She then asked the police what had happened to Dan. The police responded that they could not share any information until they had confirmed her whereabouts at the time of the shooting to rule her out as a suspect. Wendy told the police that she had left her home around noon to run an errand. When the police asked her if she knew anyone who would want to hurt Dan, she burst into tears and struggled to answer. She finally said that Dan was sometimes mean to people, but she couldn't believe anyone would be cruel enough to hurt him. The police then asked if Dan owed anyone money, and with tears in her eyes, Wendy revealed that Dan owed her child support. She seemed genuinely shocked by the situation. Police ruled out robbery as a motive because the killer did not try to break into a home or car or search pockets for valuables like a wallet, house keys, or credit cards. At the time, the only motive they could consider was revenge. But what could he have done to make someone pull out a gun and shoot someone in broad daylight like that? To gather more information, the police appealed to the public for help. Police confirmed that the murder was intentional and offered a reward for tips leading to an arrest and conviction. The reward started at $10 and increased to $25 over time. Additionally, an anonymous donor contributed a separate $100 reward. Police expanded their search for suspects by interviewing students, friends, and family members. However, their efforts were unsuccessful. As everyone described Dan as a kind person, no one could explain why anyone would want to harm him. 12 months after the crime, there have been no new leads. Police held a press conference and released a photo of a silver Toyota Prius. They did not explain why they waited a year to share this information. Further appeals from the public have yielded no results, and nearly 2 years have passed without any new leads in the case. The perpetrator has had enough time to destroy all evidence, making it difficult for police to solve the case. This continued until May 26, 2016, nearly 2 years after Dan's murder. A Leon County judge issued an arrest warrant for Sigfredo Garcia, a 30-year-old man charged with first-degree murder in the death of Dan Markel. Tallahassee police did not release details at the time of the arrest. However, a few days later, police learned that Sigfredo had an accomplice, Luis Rivera, also 30, of Miami, who was seen driving a rented silver Toyota Prius between motels on July 16-17. Police collected various pieces of evidence about the couple, including cell phone records, electronic toll collection data, and surveillance footage from nearby buildings and buses. They believed that on July 18, Dan was being monitored as he went about his daily routine, which included trips to kindergarten, the gym, and shops before heading home. However, one question has been raised: why would these two men kill someone they apparently never met? Police suspect that this may have been a contract killing, implying that Sigfredo and Luis were paid to kill Dan. If this was indeed a contract killing, then who hired them? Sigfredo and Luis realized that no matter how much money they were paid, their crimes could not be hidden. They then began to confess to the police that they were hired by Charlie and Donna Adelson. Charlie was Wendy's brother, and Donna was her mother. On the surface, they seemed to be respectable people. Running a pathology clinic together, Charlie worked as a dentist, while Donna focused on patient care. However, This information was not enough to convict Charlie and Donna. The police knew that the suspect could name anyone to save himself to find answers. The police turned to a woman named Catherine Magbanua. She was related to Charlie Adelson and was also the ex-wife of Sigfredo Garcia. Phone records show that Catherine received a call from Luis shortly after Dan's murder. Likely to inform her that the mission was complete, Catherine was the sole intermediary between Luis, Sigfredo, and Charlie, as they had never met. Over a 12-month period, Catherine sent tens of thousands of dollars, starting a few months before Dan's murder and continuing for months afterward. Most of the payments were made by check, a risky option for Donna's family because checks were easily traceable due to the signature requirement. Each check sent bore Donna Adelson's signature. After investigation, it was discovered that Donna had a strong dislike for her former son-in-law, especially in the months leading up to the murder. She had sent a series of angry emails, filled with curses and insults, aimed at Dan. In these emails, she used every vulgar word she could think of to describe him, while the entire Adelson family lived in Miami. Wendy lived in Tallahassee, near Dan's home. She wanted to move to Miami to be closer to her family, but Dan was against it. He did not engage in any violence or threats against Wendy, which allowed him to go to court and get a judgment preventing her from moving away with the children. During their divorce, they agreed to split custody of the children. In a 50-50 agreement, however, there was another reason Donna hated him. Dan went to court shortly before he was murdered to file a motion to prevent Donna from spending private time with her children without supervision, while serving time for other crimes. Luis asked to speak to the police. He said he had information that could lead to a deal. The police agreed to meet with him. During questioning, Luis shared his story. He said he did not know Dan was going to be killed until he was in the car with Sigfredo. Previously, Sigfredo had told him it was just a simple robbery. After getting in the car and learning about Dan Markel's murder, Luis was upset and insisted that he did not want to kill a man he had never met, especially since the man had 2 children. Louis also mentioned a woman named Catherine, saying that she was behind the plan. Up to this point, Charlie and Donna continue to deny any involvement in the murder. Although the police have checks signed by Donna, however, these checks do not necessarily indicate that she intended to kill Dan. They could have been written for a variety of reasons. At this point, the FBI gets involved and formulates a plan. Charlie begins to receive unusual phone calls from a man identifying himself as Sandy. Sandy questions why Luis isn't being processed in prison. Although Charlie is frightened by the calls, he tries to remain calm and does not reveal anything incriminating. In reality, Sandy is an undercover cop. The FBI has also hacked into Charlie's cell phone in hopes of gathering evidence against him. In July 2016, a Leon County grand jury indicted Sigfredo and Luis for murder. Catherine was later arrested. Luis's charges were reduced to second-degree murder. Luis Rivera was sentenced to 19 years in prison. Catherine and Charlie's trials were held together on October 19, 2016. As they were facing the same charges, the defense argued that Charlie Adelson was the mastermind behind the murder plot, claiming he had promised to split $100 between the 3 of them so that Wendy could gain full custody without further interference from Dan. During the trial, the prosecution presented a key witness, Jeffrey Lucas, Wendy Adelson's ex-boyfriend. He testified that Wendy had told him that her brother, Charlie, had mentioned the idea of hiring a hitman to kill Dan several times. On July 13, Wendy asked Jeffrey if she could share something confidential. She revealed that Charlie had explored various options for dealing with her problems and had discussed hiring a hitman to eliminate Dan. At an estimated cost of $50, Sigfredo claimed in court that Luis fired the fatal shot. However, This defense was not enough to save Sigfredo from first-degree murder. Sigfredo Garcia was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 30 years for his involvement in the conspiracy. Sigfredo said he would appeal the sentence. Catherine denied any involvement in the murder during her trial alongside Sigfredo. Her charges were reduced to second-degree murder, but the jury could not reach a verdict. The judge declared a mistrial. This retrial began on May 16, 2022, and lasted 11 days. The jury was more decisive this time. And on May 27, 2022, Catherine Magbanua was found guilty of first-degree murder and incitement to commit murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 30 years for incitement and another 30 years for conspiracy. Although the three main perpetrators were thought to be incarcerated, a new arrest occurred on April 21, 2022. Police arrested Charlie Adelson at his home. He was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation to commit murder. Following this, police discovered audio recordings of conversations between Catherine and Charlie discussing their conspiracy on the day of Charlie Adelson's trial. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years for each of the conspiracy and solicitation charges. As this case comes to a close, many questions remain unanswered. The defendant's testimony suggests that Dan Markel needed to be killed in order for Wendy to gain full custody of their children. This raises the possibility that Wendy may have had a larger role in this case than she admitted. However, it is important to note that there is no evidence to support this claim, and no charges have been filed against Wendy Donna Adelson, who signed several checks worth thousands of dollars, has a history of hostility toward Dan, was arrested at Miami International Airport on a warrant from Leon County. Donna was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation to commit murder. Donna's trial is expected to begin in late 2024 or early 2025. Dan Markel's friends and colleagues still remember him and his great contributions to legal issues. Dan devoted his life to his children, which is why he was in court so often. Because he needed to make sure they would never be taken from him, his life ended tragically at the age of just 40. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sarah Douglas. Sarah Douglas was born in 1987 in Sacramento, California, into a family of 5 siblings. They always get along and help each other. From an early age, her parents commented that she was a girl with a gentle and cheerful personality. However, during her teenage years, her personality changed significantly. She started associating with a group of troubled teens and to spend all her free time with them. As a result, she quickly dropped out of school. At the age of 19, Sarah started dating a boyfriend named Nicholas. In 2007, when she was 20, she became pregnant. By this time, her relationship with Nicholas was deteriorating, and they often fought over minor issues. The arrival of their child only increased the conflict between them, causing them to decide to separate. Nicholas moved to Santa Rosa, a city 150 kilometers away, where he began a new life with another woman. Despite being separated, he still cares for their son, and the two share custody. Sarah found herself in a challenging situation. As a young single mother, with a young child to care for, and education level is not high, she had difficulty making ends meet. Her parents were busy raising their own younger children and couldn't offer her much support. Although her mother and sister helped whenever they could, it still wasn't enough financially. She needed to find a way to earn money. Eventually, Sarah decided to work as an escort, drawn in by the good pay and flexible hours. She has an attractive appearance and quickly became famous in this industry, helping her earn a good income. However, she did not know much about the risks involved in this profession. After a few years as a call girl, she met Orville Fleming, a man who gave her the stability and security she had always craved. She hopes to quit her current job, find a husband, as well as a father for her son, and finally get her life on track. She believes so blindly in her dream that she does not notice the dangers around her. Orville Fleming was born in 1958 in California. Before he met Sarah, he was a happy husband and father. He dedicated over 30 years to his career as a fire chief, earning the respect of his community. He served for 24 years, including 3 years in Modesto. In 1993, he became a fire engineer with the California Department of Forestry. Thanks to his excellent performance, he was promoted to captain and became a battalion chief in 2012. Throughout his career, Orville built an impressive resume and reputation. He also worked part-time as an instructor at a fire academy, where he shared his valuable experience and trained future firefighters. Through hard work, he earned about $130,000 a year, enough to enjoy a wealthy lifestyle. When his children were grown, he and his wife could enjoy a comfortable life and their own pleasures. However, beneath the facade of this seemingly happy family lay a troubling secret about Orville. He spent most of his money on encounters with young escorts, as he found family life dull and craved excitement with attractive young women. He met these women through dating sites and escort services, and that led him to Sarah, a 20-year-old girl, 30 years younger than him. In his intimate relationships with these young girls, he sought the variety that was missing from his long-term marriage. His wife is a discreet woman, so he often turns to call girls to satisfy his private needs. After meeting the beautiful Sarah online, Orville began dating her regularly. She charges $300 an hour for each meeting. He became very fond of her, and their encounters began to occur more frequently. She opened up to him about her struggles, earning Orville's sympathy, which gradually evolved into love. He loved Sarah so much that he decided to divorce his wife to start a new life with her, and she agreed. Orville decided to take action immediately. He soon had a conversation with his wife, leading him to leave her and their 2 children to be with his mistress, Sarah. He purchased a house in a quiet suburb near Sacramento. Sarah joyfully shared the news with her family, believing that her life would improve and that she could finally create a stable family. She promised Orville that she would quit the escort service and never return to that line of work. Everything seemed to be going well. However, Sarah's family was concerned about the age difference between her and her boyfriend. She was only 24 years old, while her boyfriend, Orville, was 54 years old enough to be her father. However, he seemed to be a thoughtful family man, which helped ease their worries. They saw this as a happy time in Sarah's life and supported her, not wanting to affect her happiness. At the start of their life together, everything seemed perfect and joyful. Orville tries to arrange the house so that Sarah and her son feel as comfortable as possible. She gave up her job as a call girl and started a normal life, becoming a housewife. Their life felt like a fairy tale, a perfect home, and a loving relationship. Sarah wishes to have a closer relationship, and she also wants to marry Orville. Her dreams seemed to come true when Orville presented her with an expensive engagement ring, adorned with a large diamond. She accepted his proposal, but her happiness was short-lived. Orville turned out to be very jealous and controlling. He was possessive and wanted to monitor her every move, making her report on everything she did. He realized that she was financially dependent on him, and he used that to control her life, making her completely attached to him. The relationship lasted several years until Sarah grew impatient. Orville exhibits obsessive behavior and wants to control the people she interacts with, even in public. This led to suspicions and arguments between them. Additionally, conflicts arose with Orville's wife, Megan, who was still legally married to him. He filed for divorce, but the process took a long time, giving her more time to pressure him over financial matters. By early 2014, the situation had become very tense. Megan frequently calls Orville to ask him to pay off his debt and give her more money. She was particularly upset about the large sums he spent on call girl service, which often left Sarah in tears. At this point, Sarah and Orville's relationship had significantly deteriorated. She began spending more time with her mother and sister, and during one conversation, she admitted that she wanted to end the relationship due to the mounting problems. Sarah realized that continuing the relationship was a mistake. However, she did not think that her decision to leave him could lead to serious consequences. On Wednesday, April 30, 2014, Sarah's day started like any other. She sent her son to visit his biological father for a few days and planned a vacation with her mother and sister. They first went to a casino where they enjoyed themselves until 11 p.m. During that time, Orville kept calling and texting her, but she chose not to respond. He was upset that she ignored his request not to have fun while he was away. As midnight approached, Stephanie, Sarah's sister, took her back to the house she shared with Orville, and they said their goodbyes. Once inside the house, Sarah immediately noticed a strong smell of gas. She went to the kitchen and saw that the gas burners left on. Alarmed, she called her sister Stephanie to let her know that Orville had neglected to turn off the gas. It was obvious he wanted to poison her. Suddenly, a scream was heard, startling she. Orville had unexpectedly shown up, disrupt her and Stephanie's phone call. Then, all Stephanie could hear was her terrified screams. Assuming it was just another argument between lovers, Stephanie decided to hang up and go to bed. Early in the morning, Stephanie decided to call Sarah to find out what had happened the previous night. She dialed Sarah's number, but was surprised when there was no answer, as Sarah usually stayed in touch. As anxiety grew over Sarah's lack of response, she and her aunt went to Sarah's house around 8 a.m. to check. They rang the doorbell and knocked for a long time, but no one answered. Just as they were about to leave, her aunt tried the door handle, and to their surprise, the door opened. This was unusual behavior, which made them even more worried, but they decided to go inside. Once inside, they found the living room in disarray, with furniture out of place and items scattered everywhere. They cautiously made their way to the bedroom, hoping to find Sarah. At that moment, a neighbor heard them screaming from the window. He saw them running out of Sarah's house, clearly terrified. When he asked what was wrong, they told him there was a human body inside the house. The neighbor immediately called 911 to report the situation. By 9 a.m., officers were on the scene. Several officers worked together to calm and interview the witness. In the bedroom, the officers discovered clear evidence of a struggle. A young woman lay face down on the floor, showing no signs of life. She had injuries on her body and neck, including cuts and a sheet tied around her throat. Blood was splattered on the bed and walls. In the bathroom, they found a bloody towel thrown into the washing machine. All the windows were tightly closed. They quickly secured the crime scene and started their investigation. Forensic experts arrived to gather evidence, and the body was taken to the morgue for an autopsy to determine the cause of death. The witnesses identified Sarah Douglas, who was 26 years old when she died. The autopsy revealed that she suffered at least 14 stab and cut wounds, likely inflicted with a kitchen knife. There were also signs of suffocation on her neck, which was determined to be the cause of death. Forensic experts discovered multiple bruises and evidence of beatings on her body, indicating she had fought back fiercely. Blood tests showed that at the time of her death, she was neither drunk nor under the influence of drugs. Sarah's aunt and sister informed detectives that she had previously worked as a call girl, but quit after meeting Orville. Despite their age difference, she believed he was a good man who could help her build a better life. However, their relationship had become strained in recent months, and she had decided to end things with him. Additionally, Sarah's sister Stephanie informed detectives about everything she heard on her cell phone the night before. It was likely that Orville attacked Sarah and killed her out of jealousy. As a result, he became the primary suspect in the brutal murder, and a warrant was issued for his arrest. Despite their best efforts to search for him, they still couldn't find him. He was not at home, at work, with his ex-wife Megan, or with his relatives. He had gone into hiding, prompting the police to place him on a statewide wanted list. Just a day after the search began, Orville's official car was found abandoned near a house, but there was no sign of him being there, nor any clues as to where he might have gone. Police have gathered detailed information about Orville and issued a wanted poster stating that he is a particularly dangerous criminal. The database indicated that he owned 2 pistols, but they were not found in his car or at the murder scene. It is believed he was carrying them and may resist arrest. Citizens were alerted to stay vigilant and report any suspicious individuals, while also being advised to exercise caution and avoid confrontations with Orville, who may be armed and very dangerous. The search operation lasted over 2 days. During this time, family and friends gathered near Sarah's home, closely following the search and hoping for any news. They came to honor her memory as a victim of domestic violence. The media also took a keen interest in the case, tracking the police investigation closely. Orville's colleagues were equally shocked by the incident. They knew him as a kind, positive person and a professional with a stellar reputation who had consistently demonstrated his integrity on the job. However, it is worrying that he disappears soon after the death of his young lover Sarah, raising suspicions about his involvement. 5 days later, Orville was fired from his position as head of the fire department because he failed to report to work without any explanation. Given the circumstances, this was merely a bureaucratic formality. Meanwhile, the search is being extended to areas where he may be hiding. He is experienced in outdoor activities and regularly participates in challenging hikes. His endurance and survival skills are evident in extreme conditions. He is known for training in remote wilderness areas for long periods of time that few people know about. Even though there is a lot of information surrounding the case, the situation seems to be becoming more tense. Orville's wife, Megan, decided to make the situation more serious. She claimed that he and other members of the California Fire Brigade often invited escorts to the fire station for entertainment. Megan said she had seen videos showing these women arriving at the fire station and having fun inside the fire trucks. She also mentioned that a woman named Sarah had been present on a couple of occasions. The police received information regarding the situation and visited the fire station to speak with the employees and verify the details. However, they were unable to locate any video recordings or photographs that Megan had mentioned. Megan could not provide this evidence either, leaving the rumors unconfirmed. In addition, Megan also said that during the time Orville was having an affair with Sarah, he had run up a large debt due to his addiction to prostitutes. She asked him to pay the debt, but he never did. She also mentioned a diamond engagement ring that she suspected was fake. She also convinced the police that Sarah, Orville's mistress, had been stalking her, alleging that Sarah frequently called and threatened her. As a result, she sought a restraining order against Sarah, but this claim could not be substantiated as there was no evidence of harassment. It appeared that she may have fabricated these accusations to further tarnish Sarah's reputation in the eyes of the public. After 2 weeks of thorough investigation, the court denied Megan's request for divorce. On May 26, 2014, Orville was finally captured at a bus stop near where his official car was found. He had been hiding in the forest, but was spotted when he ventured out to buy food, despite having shaved his mustache and attempted to disguise himself. He was taken into custody without issue. He did not have a gun and surrendered to police. After his arrest, he needed special supervision. On May 20, 2014, Orville appeared in court. He claimed he could not afford a lawyer, but maintained his innocence. 10 days after the initial hearing, the city's road patrol began a new investigation into illegal activities involving members of the fire department where Orville worked. By October 2014, after the hearing had officially lasted more than a month, Orville formally pleaded not guilty. Sarah's family was shocked by Orville's arrogance, especially when he winked at the public defender. The prosecution detailed the troubled relationship between Sarah and he. He is portrayed as a jealous man who wants complete control over Sarah's life. He prohibited her from working, took away her personal bank account and mobile phone, and restricted her from using her own vehicle. Meanwhile, an investigation is underway into misconduct at the fire department where Orville worked. On December 29, 2014, the investigation confirmed that there was inappropriate sexual behavior between firefighters after hours. Although the video recordings mentioned by Megan were never located, but the investigation led to 16 firefighters being placed on administrative leave. In June 2015, the Orville trial entered its final stages. The defense presented defendant Orville in a favorable light, arguing that he was a victim influenced by Sarah, a prostitute with drug and alcohol problems. They argued that he was exploited and pointed out that he did not recall the argument with Sarah. This strategy was intended to help reduce the charges against him. As part of this strategy, the defense also sought to discredit Sarah. On the night of the incident, a violent argument erupted, which was overheard by her older sister, Stephanie. However, Orville described experiencing a dissociative state, likening it to being a zombie, as he went to the kitchen to get a knife. He then returned to the bedroom and stabbed Sarah multiple times. Next, he began strangling her until she showed no signs of life. He maintained that he could not remember the details, stating that the incident played out in his mind like disjointed fragments. Orville attempted to sway the jury by expressing deep remorse for his actions. The prosecution aimed to demonstrate that he was not telling the truth. They presented recorded interrogations where his statements contradicted his testimony during the trial. This discrepancy damaged his credibility and led the court to pursue a first-degree murder charge. On June 24, 2015, just 2 days after the debate ended and just before his birthday, Orville Fleming was charged with second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Sarah's death had a devastating impact, not only on her, but also on those around her. A few months later, her brother Leroy, who was very close to her, died, unable to cope with the grief of losing his young. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of a fair Elodie Kulik. At around midnight on January 11, 2002, the French Rescue Service received a heartbreaking call. A woman, her voice panicked, screamed that she had been kidnapped. Other voices could be heard in the background before the noise increased, and the attackers took over the phone, cutting off the call forever. The call left the rescue service extremely worried, but the operators were unable to gather any useful information. Attempts to call the number back were unsuccessful as it was either out of coverage or switched off. The situation led to an investigation into one of the most unusual crimes the police had ever encountered. They had no information, not even the name of the caller. The only option was to investigate the mobile phone number, but at the time, the technology could not accurately track the caller's location, so the technology was of no help. In the early morning hours of January 11, 2002, at around 7 a.m., a random driver in the rural area of Picardy made a disturbing discovery. He noticed a car that appeared to have been abandoned in a ditch, with damage to the vehicle and the passenger door open. Concerned that the car had been stolen and abandoned, he called the police. When asked if anyone else was nearby, he replied that there was no one around. After making the call, he continued on his way. Since it was a remote area, it took some time for the police to arrive, and they arrived at the scene around 8 a.m. A Peugeot 106 was found upside down in a ditch, which seemed unusual as there was a clear and safe stretch of highway nearby, making it unlikely that it had ended up there by accident. There were no signs of braking or skidding on the road, suggesting the car had intentionally left the sidewalk at a high rate of speed. The keys were still in the ignition, but there was no sign of the driver or any passengers. Police used the license plate to identify the owner. Afer Elodie Kulik, a 24-year-old bank employee who lived nearby. While investigating the abandoned car, her bag was discovered inside, raising concerns for police. The bag contained her money, cards, and keys, but she had disappeared without a trace. Police went to the bank where the affair worked. Bank employees told them she had not shown up for work that day. They then contacted the local hospital, but there were no reports of any victims matching Afer's description. That morning, Afer's father contacted the police to report her absence. He explained that he had tried calling her cell phone, but she did not answer and did not make contact, which was very unusual for her. Normally, if she had any problems, she would always notify her family if she would be late or unable to come home. However, this time, she did not respond and it appeared that she had disappeared. Police began searching the area where her car was found and decided to release a photo to raise public awareness of her disappearance. On the morning of Saturday, January 12, 2002, a worker from a nearby farm went to a landfill 12 kilometers from the station. In the distance, he saw what he initially thought was a tree trunk. However, as he got closer, he was horrified to discover the disfigured body of a woman. He quickly called the police to report his horrific discovery. When the officers arrived at the scene, they were confronted with a horrifying sight: the partially burned and disfigured body of a young woman, showing clear signs of a violent death. Tests are needed to confirm the identity of the body. The body was discovered nearly 6 kilometers away from where her car was found the previous day, which was unusual. Police noted that this area is not frequented by many visitors. It is isolated and not a tourist destination. This suggests that the suspect is likely a local resident. The crime scene was secured and thoroughly searched for evidence. The gendarme discovered a fresh cigarette, but that may have been discarded by the potential killer. Additionally, a condom containing male fluid was located next to the body. Police focused on finding tire tread marks from any vehicle that might have brought the affair to this location, but they were unsuccessful in locating any. All collected evidence was sent to forensic scientists for analysis. On January 12, the police contacted Afer's parents to inform them of the sad news. When the family learned of the incident, the parents were devastated by their daughter's death. Overwhelmed with grief, the mother attempted to end her life. She survived but fell into a coma, remaining in that state for years until her death in 2011. The desperate father was determined to find his daughter's killer. Afer was a highly intelligent and educated young woman. She studied law in northern France and later returned to her hometown of Péronne. At just 23, she was offered a position at a bank, where she excelled and quickly became the youngest director in the bank's history. She took great pride in her career accomplishments. In addition to her career success, Afer was also very beautiful, with blonde hair and blue eyes. The forensic examination of Afer's car determined that it was traveling at a low speed. There were no signs of collision with another vehicle, raising the possibility that someone inside the car might have deliberately driven it into the ditch. When police checked Affair's mobile phone, they found a call to the local rescue service shortly after midnight. The call ended suddenly after she managed to scream. Police retrieved a 26-second recording filled with noise and unidentified male voices. While this recording did not provide clear evidence, it was notable because it indicated male involvement during the incident. The autopsy results showed that Affair died painfully from strangulation, and DNA evidence indicated that she had been raped. However, this DNA did not match any profiles in the database, suggesting her attacker had no prior criminal history. Police believed that the suspect's careless handling of the DNA would eventually lead him to reveal himself again. However, this assumption raised concerns, as it could result in another victim, so they could not afford to wait. Police organized street patrols and collected DNA samples from all male acquaintances of the affair. If these efforts did not lead to results, the search would expand to the surrounding area near the crime scene. The instincts of the gendarmes proved correct. Just 10 days after finding Affair's body, a police commissioner from another precinct arrested a man named Kirill, who had a history of sexual violence. He was in the area on the night of the disappearance and later attacked another woman, who reported the incident. While Kirill admitted to harassing this woman, claiming it was just harmless flirting, he denied any involvement in Affair's murder. The investigation of Kirill involved checking his car, which had scratches containing gray paint. This paint matched the color of the Peugeot 106 driven by Affair. DNA samples were taken from Kirill for comparison. However, the analysis showed that the paint did not match Affair's car, and Kirill's DNA did not match any evidence from the crime scene. As a result, Kirill was released, and further inquiries into Affair's acquaintances did not produce any new leads. The case has no prime suspect and no new leads. It seems the investigation has reached a dead end. Meanwhile, Affair's grieving father Jackie remains closely involved in the investigation and begins his own investigations. In order to quickly find the culprit, he ensures that the case is widely reported in the media, hoping that this will lead to new leads. On April 15, 2002, 3 months after Affair's body was discovered, new clues emerged in the case. The police received a detailed report from audio experts who had analyzed the recording of Affair's last call to emergency services. The experts carefully filtered out the background noise and identified 2 distinct male voices among the cries for help. One voice was calm and tried to reassure the victim, while the other, more aggressive, argued that she needed to be killed. They noted that the attackers had a heavy accent typical of an area called Picard, which happened to be close to where Affair's body was found. However, this information did not make the police's task any easier. They still lacked data, and the search for a new suspect was slow, with the assumption that 2 men were involved. After 6 months of unproductive investigation, the police department received a call from a farmer in Turtree. On July 8, 2002, he reported discovering a young girl's body on a haystack while heading to work. The shocking scene also revealed another mutilated body. Forensic experts, horrified by the brutality, noted that her limbs were dislocated and her body showed signs of having been run over by a vehicle. This location was only 30 kilometers away from where Affair had previously been found. The victim was identified as Patricia, a clerk who was known for riding her bicycle. She had gone missing just days before the farmer's discovery. Notably, similar items were found at this crime scene. Patricia was recognized as a beautiful girl who worked in a restaurant in Alberta. It was clear to police that these cases were linked, as such violent incidents had never occurred in this previously peaceful area. Witnesses who saw Patricia shortly before her death reported that a black sedan was following her bicycle on the street. At the time, they did not think much of it. Unfortunately, this was all the information the police could gather, the witnesses could not remember the car's make, model, or license plate. However, the police believed this crime was connected to a previous case, and new information about the black sedan helped narrow down the search. The media quickly picked up the story, increasing public fear and spreading rumors about a possible serial killer. The police's struggle to solve the case led to the discovery of a third body on August 21, 2002. In Villa Brentoni, a van was found abandoned near the railroad tracks. And inside it, police discovered a third young girl who had been wounded by a bladed weapon and died from internal bleeding. Unlike the earlier victims, this girl's identity was unknown because no one had reported her missing. The police spoke with local residents and learned about the parents of a daughter who had not returned home the night before. They thought she was out with friends. Upon investigation, they recognized the victim as their 18-year-old daughter, Crestel. She was killed approximately 40 kilometers from where the first victim was found. In just 7 months, the gendarmes encountered 3 similar murders of young girls, each caught by the criminals at night on roads between settlements. The locations of these crimes on the map created a triangle that the media called the Triangle of Death. This situation caused public anxiety to escalate, leading residents to hold a memorial procession to express their fear for safety. Even with more police patrols and checkpoints, attempts to gather new evidence and testimonies from other potential victims were unsuccessful. However, by the end of November 2002, the investigation into the second Patricia victim's murder produced new leads. DNA found on the victim's clothing identified a suspect named Jean-Paul Conti, marking an important breakthrough for the police. Police arrived to question Conti, a man who had served 17 years in prison for a series of rapes. When he saw the police, he was very surprised. He remained calm and did not attract the attention of those around him. His home was located in the Triangle of Death, which included the locations where the 3 victims were found. Conti was arrested in the early morning of November 25, but police needed more evidence to link him to the murders. His DNA was only found on the clothing of the second victim, and there were no traces on the first and third victims. The investigation later determined that he was only involved in the murders of the second and third victims, resulting in a life sentence. In addition, it was confirmed that he could not have been involved in the murder of Affair, as he was in prison at the time. This indicates that the cases of Affair and the other victims are unrelated, revealing that there are at least 2 killers operating in the area, targeting young girls. The investigation resumed with meticulous efforts to identify all mobile devices that may have been in the vicinity where the body and a gray Peugeot 106 were discovered. A total of 14,000 signals were recorded and needed analysis. Specialists undertook a massive task that included reviewing over 600 sent messages, listening to more than 10,000 conversations, collecting 5,500 DNA samples from found mobile phones, and conducting thousands of interviews. Police examined over 500 theories related to the crime, but none provided any leads. The department received numerous anonymous letters identifying various individuals as potential killers. Police followed up on these leads, which consumed a lot of resources, but ultimately did not advance the case. After a lengthy period, police offered a reward of €60,000 for information leading to the capture of the real criminal. However, this also failed to yield results, leaving the police at a standstill. 9 years after Affair's body was discovered, a new police officer joined the investigation. He was a young specialist with a fresh perspective and new skills. He suggested a method that focuses on analyzing the DNA found at the crime scene to search for close relatives of the DNA's owner, rather than just the owner themselves. This innovative technique was used for the first time in France in this case and proved to be a significant breakthrough in the investigation. Progress was made in November 2011 when police identified a relative of the killer. Evidence strongly suggested that the killer was part of the Wired family. It was believed that the elderly man was not involved, meaning that the perpetrator was likely his son. The Wired family had lived in the area for nearly 50 years, and their son, Gregory Wired, was a 23-year-old plumber at the time of the murder. To protect the information, police kept his identity a secret for several weeks. However, they were disappointed to discover that Gregory Wired had died in a traffic accident shortly after the affair murder in November 2003, which was officially ruled a fatal accident. The Gregory's death shortly after Affair's murder explained why his DNA was not found during random sampling of local residents from 2002 to 2010. His profile closely matched the description of the criminal. Gregory, known to his friends as a motorsport racing enthusiast, was cheerful but had a violent streak. He abused alcohol and often lost control when intoxicated, making him prone to aggression. To conduct a DNA examination of the suspect, authorities decided to exhume his body from the cemetery for testing. The results revealed a complete match, identifying one of the killers. The next step for the gendarmerie was to find the owner of the second voice from Affair's last call recording. They began by investigating Gregory's immediate circle. The police aimed not only to piece together the events, but also to ensure that no further threats existed for other young women. While only traces of Gregory were found on the condom at the crime scene, another male voice was clearly captured on the recording. Police then investigated Willie Bardon, a former plumber and bartender who was a close friend of Gregory's. They had many interests in common, and a recording confirmed that it was his voice. Willie lived nearby, and police knew of his past allegations of violence against women, although those incidents did not result in legal action. Witnesses reported that he had chased them in his car. Despite his troubled past, he had no criminal record, which meant that his DNA was not in the police database. He vehemently denied any involvement in the crime and claimed that the police were mistaken. Ultimately, his DNA was not found at the crime scene. In late March 2013, Gregory's ex-girlfriend assisted police in identifying the voices of Gregory and Willie by listening to a recorded phone call. Willie, who had a recognizable accent, was recognized by people who knew him. Despite this evidence, Willie denied any involvement in Affair's death, maintaining his innocence. Some described him as a kind man, a caring husband and father, while others painted a different picture, noting his impulsive behavior, extramarital affairs, alcohol abuse, and repeated advances toward women. Nevertheless, the case against him went to court. The prosecution's case rested largely on the identification of Gregory's girlfriend's voice and several others. Despite the lack of substantial evidence, the court ruled in favor of the prosecution. In 2019, 45-year-old Willie Bardon was convicted of gang rape, kidnapping, and murder and sentenced to 30 years in prison. While in custody, he attempted to end his life to prove his innocence. His lawyers quickly filed an appeal, and which was accepted. They argued that the voice on the crucial recording belonged to someone else. Experts analyzed the recording but could not confirm whether it was actually his voice, as it was unclear and discontinuous. This uncertainty raised doubts about the evidence against him. As a result, his conviction was appealed and Willie was acquitted due to insufficient evidence. He was released from prison on September 25, 2020. The story continues. A new trial began, and on July 1, 2021, Willie was convicted again and sentenced to 30 years in prison. His attorney appealed the decision, but the appeal was rejected. The defense team expressed their commitment to doing everything possible to free this innocent man, but he remains in custody. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Christy Giles. Christy and her friends attended a Halloween party at Soho House, West Hollywood, and had a fantastic time. After the party, however, Christy and her friend Hilda didn't go home. Christy Giles, born November 5, 1997, grew up in Mount Olive, Alabama. She is extremely beautiful and intelligent, attracting attention wherever she goes. Christie was the runner-up in the Miss Alabama beauty pageant. At the age of 14, she signed her first modeling contract, gaining financial independence from her parents. At the age of 18, she moved to Los Angeles, California after being recruited by a famous modeling agency. By the age of 24, she had become a successful model, appearing in fashion magazines and advertising for major brands, while also exploring acting. Christie is very close to her parents and sisters. In 2019, Christie met Jan and married him on August 31, 2020. They are a loving couple and her husband owns a candy store. On Friday, November 12, Christie, along with Christine Giles, Hilda Marcelo Sobrales Arzola, and another friend whose name is unknown, attended a Halloween party. Jan was away in San Francisco for the weekend and couldn't join them. After the party, Christie and Hilda did not return home. At around 5 p.m. on Saturday, Christie's body was found dead on the sidewalk outside a Culver City hospital where she had been left. 2 hours later, Hilda, 26, was found outside another hospital, still alive and in critical condition. Her family traveled from Mexico to be by her side, hoping she would recover. Sadly, there was no miracle. Hilda was declared brain dead 2 weeks later and taken off life support. Her organs were donated, allowing part of her to continue living. Hilda, who is from Mexico, graduated with honors and landed her dream job as an interior designer in Los Angeles. A third friend who attended the party with Christie left early and was not injured. Preliminary autopsy results indicate the girls died of an overdose of illegal substances. Toxicology reports found a mixture of drugs in their systems, but no signs of a physical struggle. It is unclear how the drugs entered their systems, as both girls said they lived healthy lifestyles. Initially, Los Angeles police believed the girls had voluntarily taken the drugs, leading to their overdoses. However, after interviewing a friend of Christie and Hilda, their views changed. The friend mentioned that the girls had met several men at the party, and that the men had invited them elsewhere. She described the group as 4 men in their 40s and 1 woman. 2 men act indecently, running around shirtless as if they are on drugs, while a third man, who appears sober, focuses on Hilda. A 4th man and a woman appear to be a couple. This group stands out at the party because of their age. Initially, the woman compliments Christie's friend, leading to an introduction to the men. Feeling uncomfortable, Christie's friend left the party with her brother an hour after the group arrived. Surveillance footage revealed 3 masked men dropping the women's bodies at separate hospitals before fleeing. Christie's husband, Jan, was deeply saddened by her death, as she had never used drugs, especially since her cousin had struggled with addiction and a close friend had died of an overdose. Jan suspected her drink had been spiked. At 12 o'clock, Jan tracked her phone to an apartment building at 8641 West Olympic Boulevard in Los Angeles, where the girls reportedly attended a party. Her phone was still there at 1:30 a.m. The police discovered that the building had only 7 apartments and identified which one hosted the party and who invited the girls. It was David Pierce's apartment. He claimed the girls took drugs voluntarily, but he has no information about what happened to them. Recently, it was reported that the police interviewed David's neighbors. They mentioned hearing strange sounds, like cries of pain, coming from his apartment on Saturday throughout the day. They also noticed that many people frequently visited his place, often making noise. Other bones from the first party also saw David with friends at the party and they behaved strangely. After Jan shared Christie's story on social media, he received numerous messages from other girls who had similar experiences involving these men. They reported being taken from parties, drugged, and raped, though all the girls survived. Out of fear, they did not report it to the police. Christie's father was a military officer who served in Iraq and trained his daughters in self-defense. Christie's sisters were well prepared and could defend themselves even with a ballpoint pen. This makes it all the more puzzling for Christie's parents to understand what happened to her, as there were no signs of a struggle on her body. Hilda's family is also seeking justice for both Hilda and Christie. Hilda's parents are confident that their daughter did not willingly consume any illegal substances. They had taught her about the dangers of drugs. Hilda was an active person who loved sports and hiking. Her family believes that the girls were forcefully given drugs with the intent of assaulting them, but the perpetrators overdosed them by mistake. What angered the parents was that instead of taking Hilda and Christie to the hospital to save them, the men chose to abandon them. On December 16, 2021, the Los Angeles Police Department announced the arrest of 3 men connected to the deaths of Christie Giles and her friend Hilda. David Pierce, 37, was arrested for manslaughter and is being held on $1 million bail. Michael Ansbach, 47, and Brant Osborne, 42, were arrested for being accessories after the fact to manslaughter, with both held on $100,000 bail. These men were the last to see the women alive. A photo has surfaced showing Hilda with David and Michael at the party. Location data from Christie's phone showed that she and Hilda had gone to David's apartment in East Los Angeles after attending a party. They were reportedly out with 3 men in the early morning hours of November 13, according to David's neighbors. A Toyota Prius seen in surveillance footage matched the vehicle used when 3 masked men dropped Christie and Hilda off near the hospital. The men were known to frequent clubs and bars in Los Angeles, meeting women at parties, inviting them to their homes, allegedly using illegal drugs, raping them, and then releasing them. But for Christie and Hilda, it appears they miscalculated, leading to their overdoses. The police are currently gathering information from all the affected girls. Several girls have already come forward, claiming they ended up in David's apartment under similar circumstances. They believe that the men spiked their drinks without their consent, causing them to black out and lose memory of the events. Some girls also reported that the men harassed them, pretending to be film producers, and invited them to a casting. It has been revealed that Michael is a videographer, Brant is an actor with minor TV roles, and David is an actor and producer known. According to several co-stars on set, Brant bragged about driving Christie's Hyundai the night they died. Actor Stephen Bauer, known for his role in the cult classic Scarface, has come forward to say he witnessed David assaulting a girl at a house party in Beverly Hills. The men were questioned by the police and admitted to taking the girls home from the party. However, they claimed the girls took drugs voluntarily and overdosed. Unsure of what to do, they decided not to call 911 to avoid trouble. Instead, they left Christie's body near a hospital after removing the car's license plate to avoid detection. They later left Hilda's body at the hospital, hoping she would regain consciousness. To date, the police have not received the CCTV footage as the investigation is still ongoing. A GoFundMe has raised more than $130,000 for the girls' funerals or investigation, and the amount continues to grow every day. On November 20, 2021, a memorial service was held for Christie in California. Friends laid flowers on the beach, carved hearts in the sand, and erected bushes and arches in her memory. Brant, 42, and Michael, 47, were both arrested on suspicion of being accessory to manslaughter in connection with the deaths of Christie and Hilda, but have since been released from custody while the investigation continues. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Samantha Knight and Renee Aitken. Samantha Knight was born in 1977. She lived with her parents in the suburbs of Menly, Australia. But her parents' relationship did not last long, and they divorced. Then, she and her mother moved to Bronte. When she was in 6th grade, they relocated again, this time to Bondi, a suburb of Sydney, where they settled in an apartment on Imperial Street. Their lifestyle was modest. Her mother worked long hours, which forced her to be independent. Her father frequently visited and provided financial support. On August 19, Samantha, a schoolgirl, turned 9 years old. After classes ended at 4 p.m., she returned home around 4:15 p.m., while her mother was still at work. In the 1980s, it was common in the suburbs to use simple door latches. The neighborhood was calm and safe, and everyone knew each other, allowing children to stay home alone in locked houses while their parents worked. This was considered normal, so Samantha had the freedom to come and go from their apartment while her mother was at work. August 19th was just like any other day. After school, Samantha changed into a pink skirt, a dark blue jumper, and blue sandals before heading out for a walk. A few hours later, her mother, Tess Knight, returned home from work and found a half-eaten sandwich in the kitchen, but little girl was missing. Tess wasn't initially worried, as it was common for Samantha to go for walks with friends and sometimes skip meals to do so. She continued with her evening routine, expecting her daughter to return soon. However, as it got darker, Tess began to feel anxious. Samantha usually came home before dark, and her absence was concerning. She decided to search for her daughter. Since they had recently moved to the area, not many people knew her, making the search more difficult. She asked neighbors, acquaintances, and Samantha's friends if they had seen her, but no one had any information, which heightened her alarm. Without a mobile phone, she couldn't call Samantha or track her whereabouts. When she returned home, Tess checked again to see if Samantha had come back while she was out, but she was still missing. In a state of urgency, she called emergency services to report her daughter's disappearance, Samantha. Soon after, the police came to her house. They spoke with she to gather details about Samantha's disappearance. She was confused and said she didn't know what had happened because she was at work. Unfortunately, there were no surveillance cameras in the area, so the police had to rely on tips from witnesses who might have seen something unusual. Police immediately interviewed neighbors, friends, family members of Samantha and anyone nearby for clues. Several store employees reported seeing the girl. Samantha had visited at least 3 different sections of the store selling office supplies, and she was last seen walking down the street. Some witnesses thought she might have been talking to a man. However, they did not find anything suspicious. The police had no other leads. They thoroughly searched the area and followed the route Samantha had taken, but they did not find anything relevant to the investigation. The public was soon informed about the incident. The police requested assistance from local residents through the media, sharing Samantha's photo and description of clothing. Local residents acted quickly. The very next day, hundreds of volunteers participated in a search operation throughout the city. The media also extensively covered this tragic incident. The possibility that Samantha had left home was not even considered. She was too young. At her age, kids typically do not run away from home to spend time with friends. All of her belongings were still at home, and she had never displayed any rebellious behavior before. Samantha was a sweet, kind, and calm girl who worked hard in school, leading detectives to believe she had been kidnapped, possibly taken from her home by someone who maliciously opened the door. Local residents is extremely uneasy. There had never been a kidnapping in their quiet suburb. Residents began to scrutinize one another, fear that the criminal may be living in their area. Investigators had little information to investigate, relying mainly on interviews with local shopkeepers. Unfortunately, no one could provide useful leads to help locate Samantha. The investigation was further complicated because in the 1980s and 1990s, methods of tracking missing persons were not well developed. There were no alert systems like Amber Alerts, no DNA testing, and other modern investigative techniques. Therefore, law enforcement agencies need to conduct searches as efficiently as possible. For instance, They created a mannequin dressed like Samantha the day she disappeared to help jog the memories of those who witnessed it, but this did not produce the expected results. Tess was heartbroken. Samantha's father also joined the search for daughter. Initially, he was even considered a suspect, as investigators thought he might have kidnapped his daughter to keep her with him. However, he denied these accusations. He explained that he maintains a peaceful and respectful relationship with his ex-wife and sees his daughter regularly. There was no reason for him to kidnap her. When the investigation gets difficult, detectives must try their best to identify suspects. The relatives of Samantha began to lose hope of finding her alive and feared the worst. Police are also leaning towards the theory that the girl may have died, possibly taken by human traffickers and taken to another country. This theory was explored, but for 12 years, there is no evidence to confirm this. When the police received a significant lead from a woman, they focused on a local resident named Michael Guider. He lived near where Samantha had disappeared, had been in prison since 1996 for child rape and may be a suspect in Samantha's disappearance. Michael's life is full of disgusting incidents. Born in 1950, he grew up in Melbourne with an alcoholic mother and a younger brother named Tim, born in 1953. Eventually, their mother sent them to an orphanage, where Michael faced further sexual abuse from older children, many of whom were under the influence of drugs. Other children also suffered violence, including Tim, but they all remained silent due to threats. Michael's mental health becomes increasingly serious, and as he matures, he begins to negatively impact the other children in the orphanage. When he was 15 years old, he escaped and began a life of petty crime. His younger brother, Tim, no better, he committed armed robbery and was imprisoned for it. After serving his time, Tim seemed to reform. He became a sculptor, got married, and had children, staying out of trouble and off criminal records. In contrast, Michael continued his criminal activities and showed no intention of changing. He never held a steady job and only worked part-time as a gardener, mowing lawns for neighbors. Michael's first arrest came in the 1970s, when he was charged with setting fire to a store. As an adult, he developed a passion for Australian Aboriginal culture and became knowledgeable about rock art. However, in 1996, he was convicted of sexual offenses for molesting 11 children, aged 2 to 16. At least 60 similar charges were brought against him. Some sources suggested that the actual number of victims could be much higher. During the investigation into the child abuse cases, Michael quickly cooperating with the police. This was taken into account during the sentencing. As a result, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Michael usually acts in a consistent manner. He targeted vulnerable single mothers, often those who struggled with alcohol or drug addiction, or those who were easily influenced. By building trust with these women, he presented himself as kind and courteous, manipulating their perceptions to lower their guard. He often sought opportunities to be alone with their children, claiming he wanted to care for them while their mothers were away. Mothers noticed his attentive behavior and had no qualms about leaving him with their children. By posing as a caregiver, he gained access to the children, which he exploited. Michael would give the children Coca-Cola that was laced with sleeping pills. Once they were unconscious, he photographed and sexually assaulted them. Eventually, some children had the courage to tell their mothers about Michael, and the truth was revealed that he was acting like a serial predator. When the police searched his home, they discovered a large stash of photos, numbering in the thousands. Several photos showed instances of sexual abuse while the victim was unconscious, including images of Samantha and one of her friends without clothes. In one of the photos, police discovered the best friend of Samantha. At that time, she was already 21 years old, and detectives attempted to speak with her. However, both she and her mother refused to cooperate. Eventually, they were summoned to court and compelled to testify. Investigators are looking into a connection between Michael, a serial rapist, and Samantha's disappearance. Among the evidence found, police discovered a peculiar album containing newspaper clippings about missing children, including Samantha. Detectives were curious about why he kept these clippings. Normally, criminals often do this to gather mementos related to their crimes. During questioning, Michael claimed he was simply interested in unsolved cases out of curiosity. While this album was not a major issue, when combined with other elements of his criminal record, it raised serious concerns. After reviewing all the evidence, including photographs of violent scenes, police filed 11 additional charges against him. The total sentence for these new crimes was 6.5 years. At that time, investigators were unable to charge Michaels with kidnapping Samantha, but they suspected his involvement in her disappearance and continued to monitor him. While he was in prison, police observed that he was beaten during all interrogations. He endured severe mistreatment, his cellmates attacked and assaulted him, and the guards failing to intervene. In 2000, journalist Denise Hoffman wrote a book about the missing child, Samantha. She was personally acquainted with Michael and highly appreciated his work as a renowned expert on Australian Aboriginal life. He was knowledgeable in this field and had appeared on television. However, despite their friendship and his expertise, Denise had strong reasons to believe that he was linked to the case of Samantha's disappearance. She begins investigating on her own after he confides in her about his wife, who also knows Samantha's mother. Denise noticed that Michael's demeanor changed significantly whenever the conversation shifted to Samantha's case. During these discussions, his expression will change a lot. He began speaking in a strange, muffled tone and appeared increasingly unsettling. This behavior made Denise even more suspicious of him. Unfortunately, Denise were unable to resolve the case and failed to get a confession from Michael. He denied any involvement in Samantha's disappearance, claiming he had only seen her a few times and did not remember her. This was clearly a lie. To assist the police, Michael's younger brother, Tim, agreed to help him confess. Tim underwent intensive training and consulted psychologists to find the most effective method to help Michael tell the truth. Michael was already under significant stress, and as he broke down, he confessed to accidentally killing Samantha in 1986. He described to the detectives what happened the day little girl disappeared. He claimed that he had known Samantha for some time and had earned her trust, which led her to agree to go with him that day. Michael drove her to a remote area in the wilderness. There, he offered her a bottle of Co-Ca laced with sleeping pills. After she drank it, she lost consciousness. When he began to assault her, she suddenly woke up and started screaming. To silence her, he gave her more sleeping pills, and she passed out again. Afterward, he briefly stepped out of the car for a walk. When he returned, he found that little girl was unresponsive. However, he maintained throughout the interrogation that it was an accident. He claimed he only intended to assault her and never meant to kill her, insisting that he had never killed anyone before. Michael accepts responsibility for his actions towards Samantha, but he did not apologize to her family or leave the courtroom. In 2002, he confessed during the trial to the unintentional murder of Samantha Knight and was sentenced to 17 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 12 years. Samantha's family were outraged by what they considered a lenient sentence, but this was the maximum penalty for manslaughter at the time. The prosecutor called Samantha's best friend as a witness. This girl, who appeared in photographs and was believed to have also been affected by Michael's actions, had previously refused to speak to law enforcement, citing fears of revealing information. Her silence had serious consequences for many children, including the tragic loss of Samantha. She attended court with her mother, who supported her, but their identities were kept confidential. Samantha's best friend mentioned that she often felt lonely when her mother was at work, so she will go for a walk. During those times, she met Michael, who gave her the attention she craved. Friend claimed that Samantha's mother sometimes left she with Michael and even spent the night with him, during which he molested she. However, Samantha's mother firmly denied knowing Michael and insisted that she never left him alone with Samantha. Strangely, the witnesses later retracted their statements about Samantha without providing any reasons. Finding her remains for burial became extremely important. Initially, Michael claimed he couldn't remember where Samantha's body was. However, several years into his prison sentence, he suddenly recalled that he had buried her in Cooper Park, just a 15-minute drive from her home. Yet, he later changed his story again, saying the body was buried a bit farther away than he originally indicated. On the map, he pointed to an area where a yacht club now stands, which was built just a year and a half after Samantha's disappearance. Despite extensive searches in the area using trained dogs, Samantha's remains have never been located. To this day, her body has not been found, and many doubt it will ever be found. In addition, Michael is also suspected in the disappearance of 5-year-old Renee Aitken, who vanished without a trace in South Wales in February 1984. When there was a thunderstorm, her brother went to check on her and noticed she was missing. He found her bed empty and the front door open. He told their parents, who then called the police. They began searching for her immediately. However, there was a storm at the time, so it's possible that all the evidence was washed away. Initially, the main suspect was Brian James Fitzpatrick. A man with a history of child kidnapping, he lived nearby and knew Renee's family. However, he died in a car accident just weeks before his trial. For many years, the case went cold, but in 2013, police revisited the investigation and looked into Michael. At the time of Renee's disappearance, he worked as a gardener close to their home. A family member recognized that he bore a resemblance to a suspicious man who had been seen behind their house. In Michael's scrapbook dedicated to missing children, there were articles and photos of Renee. Researcher Denise Hoffman believed that Renee's case shared similarities with the disappearance of another girl, Samantha, as both were small and light. Michael could have used drugs to incapacitate Renee's and sneak her out of the house. Michael was skilled at gaining the trust of children, causing suspicions that he was involved in Renee's kidnapping. Detectives questioned him about the incident, but he denied any involvement. They believed him, even though he had previously denied involvement in Samantha's case, which he later admitted. However, the police concluded there was not enough evidence to charge Michael with kidnapping, and Renee's case remains unsolved. She has not been found. Both the police and Renee's family believe she has likely been dead for a long time. While in prison, Michael developed an interest in Aboriginal culture and history, studying various materials on the subject. He authored several works, which were sent to libraries across Australia. In total, he wrote 16 pieces, ranging from 6 to 28 pages long. He also pursued studies in archaeology and earned a degree in that field. Michael was remarkably intelligent, impressing everyone with his capabilities. He has the potential to become a scientist and can contribute to research projects. However, he chose a path of crime. In 2014, Michael became eligible for parole after serving the minimum term of his imprisonment. This made the public extremely indignant, as many people believed he should remain in prison. Individuals like him will never change and will continue to pose a threat to society. Due to public backlash, Michael's request for parole was not granted and he remains in detention. The public, including Samantha's mother, wants Michael to spend the rest of his life in prison. She continued to suffer from the pain of losing her daughter. She could not give her daughter a proper burial and had never seen any sign of remorse from Michael. Supporters of Michael sought to challenge his sentence. They pointed to his participation in 55 therapy programs in prison, claiming he had undergone rehabilitation and was a model prisoner, he deserving of freedom. He behaved well and did not violate prison rules, leading to his release on September 5, 2019, at the age of 68. As part of the bail conditions, Michael was required to stay under strict supervision for an additional 5 years in a special facility for former prisoners. Police fitted him with a tracking bracelet, and he was given a lengthy list of 56 restrictions. These included bans on visiting public places, playgrounds, and schools, a prohibition on contacting minors, restrictions on leaving the country, a ban on changing his name or appearance. He was also subject to regular checks for drug and alcohol use. Despite these measures, there was no guarantee that Michael, the serial rapist, would refrain from committing further crimes. Even his younger brother, Tim, believed releasing him was a mistake. The public was outraged by his release, they fearing that he was already planning new crimes against children. When Michael was released, he had a large tumor in his groin, which he had refused to treat while in prison due to a lack of trust in the medical staff. After his release, he focused on his health, successfully treating the tumor and managing his heart disease. However, he declined medication to reduce his libido because he believed they would interfere with his other medications. Initially, Michael stayed in a shelter near Long Bay, but when the public discovered his location and began to pursue him, he was moved to a secret location. The public was outraged that once his supervision period ended, he would be completely free, able to change his name and appearance, get married, have children, and travel, opportunities that Samantha would never have. This led many enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Jennifer Wirtz. After Rebecca and her husband divorced, she and her daughter, Jennifer, moved to the Somerset Tower residential area. She purchased an apartment in a 7-story building in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Jennifer felt that her mother was having a hard time during this period, and she thought that it had something to do with her parents' divorce. However, Rebecca's loneliness didn't last long. She soon met Charles, a worker at the complex, and they began a romantic relationship. Charles was an eccentric and cheerful man who often joked around. Before long, Charles moved in with Rebecca. Initially, she felt this was a positive change after the emotional hardships of her divorce. She appeared to enjoy her new relationship. However, Charles's behavior soon became concerning. His mood swings were drastic. He could go from laughing hysterically to becoming angry. He started to seem unpredictable and strange. Charles worked on weekends, and during this time, Jennifer saw the true nature of he. Charles began harassing her and quickly progressed to sexual violence. At just 7 years old, Jennifer realized that something terrible was happening. Little girl mustered the courage to tell her mother, Rebecca, about it. However, Rebecca didn't believe her daughter. Rebecca dismissed her claims, telling her that she was imagining things, which caused she to resent her mother. Rebecca never took any action against Charles, not even to investigate her daughter's allegations. As a result, the abuse continued regularly. Jennifer felt so miserable that she didn't want to go home after school because her mother was not supportive. This situation persisted for 3 years. On February 26, 1991, police contacted Rebecca to ask for information about her missing neighbor, Dee Dee Rosenthal. Detectives interviewed everyone in the area to gather information about Dee Dee. That same day, they also questioned a local rapist named Charles. He surprised them by claiming he did not know Dee Dee, despite the fact that they had been neighbors for a long time. As an employee of the complex, he should have seen her regularly at work. Dee Dee Rosenthal, 32, is a therapist who specializes in supporting children with autism. Her colleagues, patients, neighbors, and family all spoke highly of her, indicating that no one would wish her harm. Dee Dee had moved from Canada to the United States less than a year before her disappearance. Witnesses reported seeing her for the last time on February 22, and since then, there had been no leads. Investigators spoke not only with neighbors but also with Dee Dee's family. Her brother, Blaine, mentioned that Dee Dee had aspirations of attending the Alvin Institute in Philadelphia, a dream she had since college, which motivated her move to the U.S. The Alvin Institute is a specialized clinic designed to help children with autism. Blaine expressed disapproval of Dee Dee's decision to move to the United States, feeling that it was a harsh place and very different from Canada and their familiar traditions. He admitted to the police that he tried his best to prevent her from leaving for a foreign country, but she was very determined, took everything for granted, and believed she would be able to return home soon. Witnesses reported seeing a woman who resembled Dee Dee, but identified her as Lori. Unfortunately, these leads did not yield any results. Ultimately, his hopes were not realized, and Dee Dee vanished without a trace. At the beginning of the investigation, the police focused on two suspects, both of whom worked at the apartment complex where Dee Dee disappeared. The first suspect was Steve Gomez, Dee Dee's boyfriend. The second was Charles Reddish, the man known locally as Crazy Charles. Both men appeared suspicious, but the police lacked concrete evidence against them. Despite this, they remained on the investigators' radar. Charles claimed he spent the entire day on February 22nd with his mother and a young girl named Jennifer. Little girl confirmed his alibi, stating he was with her the whole time. The police could not find any evidence to charge Charles. However, some detectives noticed Jennifer's fear when they mentioned him. This caught the attention of investigators, but they could not take any action against Charles without further evidence or testimony. The Wirtz family experienced several years of suffering and humiliation after a mysterious incident, which ultimately led them to move out of the apartment complex. While this may make people suspicious, the act actually stems from anxiety about the possibility of a crime happening around them. Many residents chose to leave for their safety because rumors of Dee Dee's disappearance had spread quickly. People were eager to distance themselves from the possibility of living near a potential criminal. Meanwhile, detectives continued their investigation. As they gathered more information, they encountered increasingly conflicting clues. Forensic experts examined the home of Dee Dee, but found it completely empty. The apartment was clean and tidy, with no signs of forced entry or a struggle. However, the front door was unlocked, which was unusual for a missing person case. Despite their efforts, forensic experts found no evidence of blood. It appeared as if Dee Dee had calmly left her apartment, as her belongings were untouched and her car was still parked outside. The only clue investigators discovered was an $80 check hidden in a diary, but there was no cash in her purse or wallet. All clues pointed to Dee Dee having left her home voluntarily. Investigators learned that she had financial difficulties, often spending more than she earned and have a lot of debt, but these problems do not appear to be serious enough to involve kidnapping or murder. However, it raised the question, did Dee Dee leave to escape her creditors? After interviewing all of Dee Dee's neighbors, detectives uncovered a concerning claim from one elderly woman. She reported that on February 22nd, around 4 a.m., she was awakened by a loud thud from the ceiling, which she later realized was caused by Dee Dee, her upstairs neighbor. The sound startled her, but after a brief silence, she assumed it was just something that had fallen and returned to sleep. Meanwhile, all the other residents provided no useful information, leaving the investigation at a standstill. Dee Dee's sudden disappearance captured public attention, and the media began extensively covering the story. However, due to a lack of evidence, the case remained unresolved for years. The Wirtz family later moved into a new home north of Cherry Hill. Rebecca and Jennifer felt so sad for Dee Dee, but they never knew what happened to her. Over time, they, like others, gradually forgot about Dee Dee, including the police, who suggested she might have returned to Canada. Dee Dee's brother Blaine is not satisfied with this explanation and continues to search for her. Unlike everyone else, he is the only one who doesn't give up. He frustrated by law enforcement's inability to provide answers or locate Dee Dee. He spent years visiting local bars, restaurants, and neighbors' apartments around Hill 67, interviewing anyone who might have information. Eventually, Blaine admits that his relentless search has become a kind of obsession, causing him to lose almost everything, including his family. One day, upon returning home from another search, his wife told him she wanted to break up, marking the end of their relationship. Life was challenging for the Wirtz family after they moved to a new home. They understood why Charles was called crazy. He often acted inappropriately and hurled insults at Rebecca and Jennifer. His aggression was escalating, and although Jennifer never witnessed he physically harmed her mother, Rebecca, but little girls suspected that her mother was also suffering from his abusive behavior. However, they stayed together and Rebecca endured the troubles of the relationship. For years, Jennifer suffered from the pain of his abuse, and little girl knew her mother was enduring the same. Despite everything, Rebecca was not ready to leave him. Jennifer spent a lot of time trying to convince her mother, Rebecca, to leave Charles. Eventually, little girl succeeded in persuading her mother that their toxic relationship needed to end. They planned an escape and decided to move in with Jennifer's grandmother, a place Charles had never visited, which would keep them hidden. Jennifer was thrilled with this plan. Little girl looked forward to being free from Charles, the man who had tormented her for so long. It seemed like they were on the verge of freedom. However, Rebecca made a critical mistake by inadvertently revealing their plans to Charles. It was Jennifer's last day at school. Following Rebecca's request, little girl had secretly packed her belongings in advance and hidden them. According to their plan, Rebecca was supposed to pick her up after school around 6 p.m., right after she finished playing field hockey with her friends. When she went to the parking lot, she was surprised to see not her mother driving, but Charles, and her mother sitting in the passenger seat. Angered, she yelled at her mother, feeling frustrated that her mother never kept her promises. In response, Rebecca simply told she to get in the car and calm down. Inside the car, an eerie silence fell. Jennifer felt a sense of foreboding throughout the journey. Charles watched her intently through the rearview mirror, and she dreaded what awaited her at home. Jennifer worries that he has bad intentions to keep her and her mother by his side. When they got home, Charles seemed normal. He said he wanted to have a farewell party before they left. But Jennifer didn't buy it. Her fears were confirmed when they entered the house and found no dinner prepared. Confused, little girl asked about it, but he stammered a vague explanation, then abruptly stating he needed the car keys to buy groceries and rushed out. Desperate, Jennifer urged Rebecca to seize the moment and escape before Charles returned, sensing something was off. However, Rebecca dismissed her concerns and told her to wait for he to return. He has a surprise for them. Frustrated, Jennifer retreated to her room, lay down on her bed, and eventually fell asleep. In the middle of the night, Jennifer was jolted awake by a loud noise around 2 a.m. Alarmed, she couldn't ignore it any longer. She got up and began to descend the stairs, the noise growing louder. When she reached the doorway, she realized something terrible was happening. The sounds were like violent blows, and little girl felt helpless, not knowing how long this horrifying scene would continue. Rebecca was lying on the floor, while her attacker, Charles, leaned over her, striking her repeatedly. Suddenly, he turned around and saw Jennifer. He grabbed the little girl by her hair and dragged her into the living room, where the violence was happening. As he pulled she past Rebecca, she saw something horrifying. Her mother's face was so badly injured that she could hardly recognize her. Rebecca, 43 years old, had a shattered jaw and a broken arm, and she showed no signs of life. To Jennifer, it looked like her mother was dead. Desperate, Jennifer pleaded with Charles not to harm them and to let them go. but he threw her into a chair in the living room, positioning her directly in front of Rebecca. Then, he picked up a small axe from the floor and slowly approached Rebecca. Panicking, little girl screamed for him to stop. She could hear her mother's labored breathing and realized her mother was still alive. But soon, there were more blows, and he attacking her mother. He was literally chopping into Rebecca with the axe. The smell of blood filled the air. Then, he pulled the sheet off Jennifer and dragged her upstairs to the bedroom. There, he tortured and raped her for 2 to 3 hours. Little girl was powerless to resist and simply prayed for it all to end. After Charles finished his torment, he sat next to Jennifer on the bed. She was badly injured and covered in blood, but she was still alive. Then, he asked her to kill him. Jennifer replied that she couldn't do that. He suddenly declared that he would kill her and then end his life, as he didn't want to end up in prison. Terrified, Jennifer didn't want to take a life, even one as evil as Charles's. Although she felt helpless, she remembered methods she had seen in crime shows about negotiating with hostage takers, and she decided to apply them. Little girl focused on listening calmly to he. She aimed to show empathy, hoping to soothe him, and gradually convinced him not only to spare her life but also to reconsider taking his own. Jennifer advised Charles that it would be a good idea if he told the police the truth, saying that he had lost control and was acting erratically. Besides, he could also negotiate with the prosecutor to get a reduced sentence. However, he, feeling uncertain, began pacing back and forth in the bedroom, holding a bloody axe. For the first time, he understood the severity of what he had done. Little girl managed to persuade he to surrender to the police, and then she called 911 for help. She was clearly in shock and found it difficult to express one's thoughts. Charles even assisted Jennifer's in getting up, dressing, and walking to the porch. The dispatcher informed them that the police were on their way, and they just had to wait. It's difficult to imagine what Jennifer was feeling during this time. She knew that he was unpredictable and could harm them at any moment. Despite this, little girl waited calmly for the police to arrive. Then, they quickly separated she from Charles. One of the detectives investigating Charles recalled his unusual reaction when asked about Rebecca's location. He vaguely stated she was inside the house and, when asked if she needed an ambulance, he claimed she can no longer be helped. Despite his assertion, it was clear that help was urgently required. A detective from the Cherry Hill Police Department arrived at the scene. This was the same officer who had investigated Dee Dee's disappearance 4 years ago. He remembered a repairman named Charles, who had caught his attention back then, and now he decided to question Charles's again. The police, along with Charles, entered the house equipped with a tape recorder to document the incident. They aimed to piece together the horrifying incidents that had taken place there. During the questioning, both the accounts of Charles and Jennifer aligned, until Jennifer disclosed the rape and torture that took place in her bedroom. Charles completely denied these allegations, he seemingly unable to accept the reality of what he had done to she. When the police mentioned the rape, he laughed, dismissing the idea of being intimate with Jennifer, a 14-year-old girl, as ridiculous. However, as the interrogation continued, he confessed to everything. Detectives from the Cherry Hill station suspect Charles has vital information about Dee Dee's case. Knowing that it was easy to get information out of Charles, they questioned him again about the disappearance of Dee Dee, who had been gone for 4 years. Their intuition was right, and he began confessing. He revealed that early one morning, he entered Dee Dee's apartment through the roof, descending onto her balcony. His intention was to rob and assault her. However, she caught him in the act. Then, in the struggle, he attacked her, raped her, and subjected her to mistreatment. He feared that she could identify him and report him to the police. To eliminate this risk, he decided to kill her. Charles explained that they fought on the bed, and during the struggle, Dee Dee fell to the floor. The loud noise of her fall was heard by a neighbor below. After that, he strangled her with a pillow and fled the scene. He had stolen $80 from her apartment, which the police found the next day. Subsequently, he returned to the scene, wrapped Dee Dee's body in a sheet, and transported it to the parking lot in a grocery cart. He also gathered her belongings and disposed of them in a nearby dumpster. After confessing to both murders, Charles led police to where he hid Dee Dee's body. But unfortunately, he couldn't recall the exact location. However, the police still believed him because he provided specific details about the crime that only the perpetrator could have known. He claimed to have taken Dee Dee to the Delaware River area, and he disposed of the body in a spot known for frequent waste dumping. During the 4 years Dee Dee's body lay there, thousands of tons of garbage accumulated, making the search extremely difficult. Despite extensive efforts, but the remains of Dee Dee were never found, and the search was eventually discontinued. Charles faced 2 trials for the murders. After the search concluded, both cases were assigned to a prosecutor from Hill. Following the initial meeting with the lawyer, Charles, apparently on the advice of his defense attorney, withdrew his earlier confessions to the murders. In any case, a confession alone is not enough to result in a conviction in the state of New Jersey. To achieve a conviction, any oral confession must be accompanied by specific and credible evidence. This means that Dee Dee's murder is unlikely to go unsolved, as the police have little evidence left other than an $80 check. 2 trials took place, one after the other, with Charles as the defendant in both cases. The first trial involved the murder of Rebecca Wirtz and the torture of her daughter, Jennifer. During the trial, Jennifer demonstrated courage and composure as a witness, providing clear and concise answers. The forensic expert testified about Rebecca's severe injuries, which included at least 25 axe blows. Due to the overwhelming evidence against Charles, the jury delivered a guilty verdict after only 40 minutes of deliberation. As a result, Charles received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The second trial involved the death of Dee Dee Rosenthal and presented a more complex situation. Although the prosecutor aimed to achieve a harsher punishment, the difficulty lay in the lack of evidence at the crime scene, which Charles had meticulously cleaned up. Furthermore, Charles retracted his earlier confession and presented an alibi, claiming that Dee Dee had simply moved away to start a new life. This new testimony gave Charles a chance to avoid conviction. However, the prosecutor tried to prove that Dee Dee was not the type of person who would give up everything and go adventuring. She has completely devoted her love to taking care of autistic children and she cannot leave them. Her brother, Blaine, corroborated this, stating that she would have informed him if she had planned to leave. Furthermore, all of her belongings, including her documents, keys, car, and pet cat, were still in her apartment. In Charles's recorded confession, he claimed that Rebecca was the only person who knew about his involvement in Dee Dee's murder. It is unclear why Rebecca chose to keep this a secret. Perhaps she was afraid of Charles or did not believe the truth. He stated in his confession, as well as in a previous conversation with his daughter, that he was under the influence of prohibited substances during both crimes. Charles Reddish was initially charged with Dee Dee Rosenthal's murder in November 1995. 3 years later, in December 1998, he was convicted of the crimes he committed against Rebecca and Jennifer. By March 2001, he agreed to confess to Dee Dee's manslaughter as part of a plea bargain with the prosecution. The terms of the agreement required he to reveal the location of Dee Dee's body. However, at the last minute, he changed his mind and refused to comply. The prosecutor believed that he realized the extent of his crimes and was concerned about additional charges, which led to him changing his mind. Consequently, the plea bargain was withdrawn, and he went to trial again in October 2001. Charles again made false claims that Dee Dee was still alive and mentioned a missing woman named Laura. However, the jury saw through the lie, and he was sentenced to death in 2002. But in 2004, the New Jersey Supreme Court overturned the death sentence. 1 year later, it was replaced with a prison term of 30 to 60 years, which was added to his life sentence for Rebecca and Jennifer. Unfortunately, the body of Dee Dee was never recovered. After the trial, Jennifer was able to start a new life. She moved in with her cousin Shannon. She was finally able to live a peaceful life, free from the years of torture and mistreatment. She attended a Catholic school, joined a support group for young girls who had survived traumatic experiences. Her relatives provided significant support. As she grew older, Jennifer was able to come to terms with the traumatic experiences she had endured. She worked hard, built a successful career, started a family, and became a mother to 2 daughters. Blaine, Dee Dee's brother, held on to hope, despite his failure to find his missing younger sister. Blaine felt relieved to know that justice had been served, and especially that Charles was no longer causing harm to anyone because he was in custody. In tribute to Dee Dee, Blaine established a Canadian foundation in her name, focusing on supporting women who have endured physical. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Corey Richins. The death of a loved one is a devastating tragedy that deeply impacts family members and children. Each person handles the loss in their own way, trying to deal with the blow of fate. To cope with this shock, Corey Richins, a woman, wrote an entire book. It seemed that she, more than anyone else, understood the depth of what happened. However, as the police delved deeper into the tragic death of a man from Utah, it became increasingly clear that there was more cynicism. Eric Richins was born in 1982 as the eldest of 3 children, with 2 younger sisters, Katie and Amy. He shared a special bond with Katie. The family lived in Summit County, Utah, where they were well known and wealthy, thanks to their cattle ranch. Many buildings in the town still bear the family's last name. Despite their prominence, the Eric were humble and kind, and they were respected by everyone who knew them. Eric grew up on his parents' farm, where he participated in sports and helped with chores. His family was part of the Mormon Church, and religion played a major role in Eric's life. He spent 2 years on a mission trip to Mexico City, where he demonstrated good character by helping the community. Upon his return, Eric attended the University of Utah, where he earned a bachelor's degree in international law. During this period, Eric began dating Julia Jurgensen. They married when Eric was just 20 years old. However, due to their youth and desire for independence, they couldn't maintain the marriage and decided to divorce. After his studies and the failed marriage, Eric saw promising opportunities to start a construction business, which he began to pursue. Eric frequently visited the Home Depot store, where he enjoyed chatting with the cashiers while waiting for his order. During his visits, he noticed a charming cashier named Corey, who was widely considered one of the most beautiful women in town. Eric was captivated by her beauty and secretly in love with her. But he hesitated to ask her out because he was still dealing with the emotional and financial fallout from his difficult divorce. Eric's celibacy continued for a while, but eventually, he asked Corey out, and she agreed. Their first date was filled with laughter and fun. They got along well, and their relationship developed quickly. The couple was truly happy despite their significant difference in social status. Eric was always cheerful and sociable, able to cheer her up on Corey's worst days. Despite the shock from his first marriage, Eric quickly realized that Corey was the one for him and soon proposed. She accepted, and after a whirlwind romance, they got married in 2013. Corey was not only beautiful but also intelligent. She attended her chosen university and earned a bachelor's degree in health management, followed by a master's degree. Corey had previously worked as an administrator at a design agency before meeting Eric in a hardware store. Corey became a new ray of light and hope for him. giving him confidence that he could build a loving family. Curry was born in 1990 in an ordinary family. Curry has an older brother and an older sister. Her father died at the age of 57 in 2010 after struggling with alcoholism. He was unable to witness Curry's wedding, which took place 3 years after his death. Before the wedding, Eric's mother insisted on a prenuptial agreement to protect her son from experiencing another shock like his previous divorce. At that time, Eric's business share was worth about $2.5 million. His mother presented the agreement as a precaution in case of divorce. According to the prenup, Curry could not claim Eric's money, and he could not claim hers. Eric arranged for Curry and partner Cody to be the beneficiaries on his life insurance policy. In the event of his death, Cody could use his portion of the insurance payout to buy out Eric's share of their business. After their wedding, Eric and Curry began their ideal life together. They bought their home, lived happily, and hoped to have children. Inspired by her successful brother who had made a fortune buying, renovating, and selling houses, Curry decided to follow the same path. With Eric's experience in the construction industry, Curry obtained her real estate broker's license and began selling real estate. Her friendly nature and attractive appearance quickly made her a well-known real estate broker in town, which made Eric proud. Eventually, Curry shared her brother's business model with Eric and they began working together. Curry identified profitable properties for resale, Eric managed the renovations, and they sold the homes. Their business flourished until a couple sued Curry for failing to disclose the true condition of a home. The lawsuit was settled out of court and did not affect their business. After 9 years of marriage, they have 3 sons, Weston, Carter, and Ashton. Despite his busy work schedule, Eric values family time, being actively involved in his sons' lives and supporting them in sports. Since 2020, things have been unusual in their relationship. While on vacation in Greece, Eric called younger sister Amy and said Curry had given him a drink that made him feel sick. He suspected she was trying to poison him and warned that if he suddenly died, Curry would be responsible. Although the family was concerned, they dismissed Eric's claims as paranoid because the couple seemed happy. After the vacation, Eric secretly changed his will in November 2020, leaving his business shares and assets to younger sister Katie without telling Curry. The couple continued to live together for another 1.5 years until early 2022. This time, the conflict was over Curry's desire to buy an unfinished mansion for $2 million, which she thought could be sold for $5 million after renovations. Eric is skeptical about the deal's profitability, causing tension between them. Curry accuses Eric of controlling her business, while he believes the investment is too risky. Around this time, Cody, Eric's business partner, was notified by the insurance company that Curry had tried to change the beneficiary on Eric's life insurance policy to her name. Although she was unsuccessful, this raised serious concerns about her intentions. Eric started considering divorce, knowing that Curry would lose everything due to their marriage contract. Eric had already transferred his share to younger sister and removed Curry's name from all documents, including the insurance policy. Meanwhile, Curry spent $1,000 on powerful and dangerous painkillers. On Valentine's Day 2022, Eric told Cody that after eating a sandwich Curry made, he suffered severe respiratory irritation, similar to an earlier incident in Greece. Despite his suspicions, Eric did not leave Curry's side or stop eating her food. Eric continued to be suspicious of Curry, especially after he refused to buy the mansion. On the night of March 4th, Eric, 39, was found dead in his bed. The night before, Curry had made Eric a Moscow Mule over dinner. After he finished drinking it, they went to bed. During the night, Curry woke up to comfort one of their sons, who had been having a nightmare. When she returned to the bedroom around 3 a.m., she found Eric cold and unresponsive. She called 911, saying that Eric had no signs of life and that her attempts to resuscitate him had failed. Paramedics confirmed Eric's death, and Curry mentioned that she had attempted CPR on him, but doctors doubted her story. The man was bleeding from his mouth, but his wife had no blood on her. His death appeared to be due to a drug overdose, as tests showed his blood levels were 5 times higher than the lethal dose. When Corey was asked why he was taking such a strong drug, she said she didn't know. Eric's family denied that he had any health problems that would warrant such medication. A review of his medical history revealed that he had not seen a doctor in a long time and that no one had prescribed him this hard-to-get prescription drug. Eric had no history of drug addiction or convictions and was otherwise healthy. Just one day after Eric's death, a dispute broke out between Curry and Katie. Curry discovers that all of her husband's businesses and assets are legally Katie's, leaving Curry with nothing. This revelation caused Curry to become aggressive, and she attacked Katie, leading to the police being called. Unwilling to back down, Curry filed a lawsuit, claiming that the prenuptial agreement had been violated. She argued that her name could not be removed from the will and insurance policy without her consent. Curry asked for her rightful share and $300,000 in attorney's fees. In response, Katie took legal action against Curry, suspecting foul play in her brother's death and accusing Curry of poisoning her brother for financial gain. Police began investigating Eric's death and suspected it was not an accident. Curry was the prime suspect. During the investigation, police requested access to Curry's cell phone. They discovered that messages with Neil, the salesman, had been deleted, but police were able to recover them. Curry said her husband's death was a huge loss for her, and was especially difficult for Eric's 3 sons, as he was very important to them. Curry played the role of a grieving, mourning widow to avoid suspicion. Police continued working on the case and found another inconsistency in Curry's testimony. According to her story, she went to her son's room at night without her phone, leaving it charging on the nightstand beside her bed. However, records showed that she was actively using the phone at that time, messaging various people. It was even determined that the phone was in motion, indicating she was walking around the house with it. This information did not match her story. The police questioned Neil, the person who sold the medicine and supplied her with the medicine. He confessed everything. He revealed that she had been experimenting with different drugs, claiming that none of them helped with her severe back pain. Little did Neil know that the drugs had an entirely different purpose. In exchange for testifying against Curry, Neil was not charged. During the investigation, it was discovered that Curry had repeatedly taken out life insurance policies on her husband. Immediately after his death, she contacted the insurance company and received $100,000. The day after her husband died, she hired a locksmith to open his safe and took about $150,000 from it. With Eric gone, there was no one to fund Curry projects, and she was also burdened with significant debts at the time of his death. She owed $190,000 in taxes, $1,847,000 to creditors for a mansion purchase, and another $514,000. Curry then wrote a book called You're With Me with her sons. She wanted a book to help her children cope with the loss of a loved one. So she decided to write it herself. After the book was completed, Curry began appearing on various shows to talk about her book. She said that the death of her husband, Eric, was a shock, and she dedicated the book to him and her children. Sales of the book skyrocketed, becoming widely popular within a few weeks. Many mothers bought it to help their children cope with the loss of a loved one. The book's plot was particularly intriguing. In the story, the husband dies from a brain aneurysm. For the Curry, it was a means to secure financial stability since she was in financial ruin. In the book, Curry seems to imply that she did something to her husband, which seems suspicious. Despite everything, Curry profited from her husband's death, benefiting from insurance payouts and earnings from selling a book. She exploited her children's grief for monetary gain. There were also suspicions that Curry might have killed her husband. Rumors suggested that Curry had an affair during her marriage and wanted to be with this man without losing the affluent lifestyle her husband Eric provided. Divorce would have been financially disadvantageous for Curry, so she allegedly killed her husband to get his money. Another motive was Eric's refusal to finance the purchase of a house. 6 months after her husband Eric died, Curry's family noticed that she was preparing a Pinterest folder with wedding ideas. This confused everyone, since all of her friends and relatives were married and no one was planning a wedding, leading to speculation that Curry might be preparing for her wedding to her lover. On May 8, 2023, 2 months after actively promoting her book, 33-year-old Curry Richens was arrested on charges of first-degree murder with aggravated circumstances. She was also charged with possession of a large amount of a controlled substance. The investigation into her husband Eric's death on May 4, 2022, lasted more than a year. Curry is currently being held without bail pending trial. Curry's neighbors and many family members were shocked and could not believe that she had caused her husband's death. Curry Richens gave numerous interviews, presenting herself as a grieving widow who, even a year after her husband's death, had not yet come to terms with the loss. This strategy helped her gain sympathy from television viewers. The interview was broadcast nationwide, causing a significant public response. Curry received significant support and increased sales of her book. She attempted to defend herself by blaming her late husband for past problems with illegal substances, but this claim has never been verified. The couple's 3 children now live with Eric's family, and temporary custody is with Eric's younger sister, Katie. Curry's book could ultimately be crucial for prosecutors in painting Eric Richens' death as a calculated murder with an elaborate cover-up. The judge has scheduled a pre-trial conference for September 23 for the prosecution and defense to discuss jury selection. A trial date has not yet been set. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Riley Whitelaw. Riley Whitelaw was born on January 20, 2005 in Colorado Springs, El Paso County, USA, the only child of Courtney, a single mother. From an early age, Riley demonstrated kindness, empathy, and respect for others. Her bright smile brought warmth and joy to everyone around her. Riley loves to draw and wants to learn to play the guitar. After attending the Air Force Academy, she proved herself to be an excellent student. Among her classmates, she was known for her calm demeanor, confidence, and leadership skills. When Riley was a teenager, her mother met a man named Chris Johnson. Their relationship quickly developed into love, leading to the decision to marry. Riley, who always wanted the best for her mother, did her best to adapt to the changes Chris brought to their home. Chris, who never had the opportunity to be a father, welcomed Riley with open arms and treated her like his own daughter, expressing that he felt lucky to be a part of her life. In 2021, Riley is 16 years old, she is more mature, and gets a part-time job at a branch of an American company that operates the second-largest pharmacy chain in the country. This pharmacy not only sells medicines and healthcare products but also provides photography services. Riley only works 2 days a week because she still has to continue her studies. Despite her busy schedule, she feels happy and enthusiastically accepts the challenge. At first, everything goes smoothly. Riley enjoys her job and always completes her tasks. She quickly gains the appreciation of customers and builds good relationships with her colleagues. Among Riley's co-workers is a man named Joshua Johnson. Not much is known about his background, but he is in his 30s and has just been released from prison. The appearance of Riley, a young girl at the pharmacy, changes his life. Joshua, who is withdrawn and hot-tempered, is Riley's complete opposite. Despite their differences, Joshua develops feelings for her. Everyone around him notices this and realizes his unusual intentions, considering Riley's age. However, he insists that he will wait until she is an adult before asking her out. Joshua cannot hide his feelings for Riley for long and begins to show his attention to her, trying to win her over. He eventually openly confesses his love for her. However, Riley does not have feelings for him. After being rejected, Joshua becomes hurt and begins to act out, trying to hurt Riley whenever possible. During a class where he is supposed to teach her and another coworker about how to work in a photo lab, he completely ignores her. This behavior frustrates Riley, as it negatively affects the quality of her work. Joshua refuses to answer her questions or offer any help. Initially, Riley was upset and often reflected on Joshua's behavior toward her, wondering what she had done to deserve such negative treatment. However, over time, Joshua crossed the line. First, he touched her inappropriately. And then he slapped her. Riley felt both angry and offended by these actions. She realized that Joshua was invading her and her personal space. Riley chose to speak up about the incident. Gathering her courage, she informed the pharmacy manager, Justin Sunni, about what had happened. Justin helped to remind Joshua. Joshua remained silent and pretended to understand. Nothing else was done to protect Riley. Not wanting to worry her mother, Riley decides to keep the meeting between her, Joshua, and her manager Justin a secret. However, she still shared with Courtney the impact Joshua's behavior had had on her. For a while, they barely worked together, and Riley tried to forget about the incident. However, when she decided to increase her hours, she found herself scheduled to work the same shift as Joshua. In early 2020, she met Jacob Lee, who was 2 years older than her. As their relationship developed, they decided to date. Suddenly, Jacob decided to work part-time at the pharmacy, just like Riley. In early spring 2022, Jacob started working, allowing them to spend more time together. Like Riley, Jacob quickly became friends with all the employees, except Joshua. Although there were no major conflicts between them, Joshua always seemed uncomfortable whenever they had to work together. Jacob wasn't the only one who noticed. The second manager, Crystal Ismail, also noticed that Joshua was jealous of Jacob because he was Riley's boyfriend. Joshua saw Jacob as his rival. Joshua still didn't give up on his love and continued to try to get closer to Riley. Feeling frustrated by his harassment, Riley finally asked for a change in her working hours. After a while, Riley needed more money and wanted to work overtime. Her boss informed her that she would have to work the same shift as Joshua because she had no other choice. Riley shared her concerns with Jacob. Riley shares her concerns with Jacob, but he doesn't take her words seriously and doesn't realize the severity of the situation. This disappoints Riley. On June 11, 2022, Riley was at the pharmacy where Crystal was in charge of management, and everything was going smoothly. Although Joshua was on the same shift as Riley, he took advantage of his coworker's distraction to enter the break room. First, he placed a busy sign on the bathroom door, then blocked the view of one of the surveillance cameras with containers, and finally taped the window. The exact details of what happened next remain unclear, but when it was time for Riley's break, she entered the break room where Joshua was hiding, ready to put her plan into action. At approximately 5:44 p.m., surveillance camera footage captured a customer named Alicia Shanky in the store when she heard a woman scream. Seconds later, she heard the door close, but Alicia ignored it. She made her purchase and left the store. Meanwhile, in the break room, Joshua attacked Riley with a knife, and the attack was both quick and brutal, and Riley died instantly. Crystal, the store manager, becomes concerned when Riley does not return to work after her break and becomes even more suspicious when she notices that Joshua is also missing. She quickly goes outside the door where the trash can is. As she approaches, she sees someone's bare feet and, feeling scared, she rushes back to the pharmacy, locking the front desk door to prevent anyone from entering. This allows Joshua to dispose of Riley's blood-stained items in the trash without being seen. He then returns home. A few minutes later, Crystal mustered up the courage and went outside again, but the person was gone. Unable to find Riley, she decided to contact the manager, Justin. She also called Jacob, but he had no information on Riley's location. Justin then went to the pharmacy to investigate the situation. It was a little after 6 p.m. when he arrived. When he arrived, he quickly began reviewing the surveillance camera footage and saw Riley walking towards the break room. In an earlier recording, he noticed Joshua stacking boxes and containers to block the camera's view. Justin walked into the break room, quickly opened the door, and turned on the lights. He was horrified to see blood everywhere. And in the corner of the room, he found Riley's body. Shocked, Justin called the police at 6:05 p.m. 10 minutes later, officers arrived at the pharmacy, where they discovered Riley's body. She was found on the floor with her badge and headphones nearby. In addition to the severe neck injury, she had suffered several other injuries. Alicia, a customer at the pharmacy during the day, passed by the scene that evening and noticed police and patrol cars. She stopped to report the screams she had heard earlier. Police officers Steve Alonso and Mike Lee began their investigation. Meanwhile, someone informed Riley's mother, Courtney, of the tragic news. The distraught mother rushed to the pharmacy and was stunned when she arrived at the crime scene. When asked by police if she knew anyone who Riley's enemies were or who might have committed such an act, Courtney did not remember Joshua. She believed her daughter was the victim of a robbery and did not know that her daughter was actually murdered by a coworker. Police collected evidence at the crime scene and sent the body for forensic examination. The Riley had 42 stab wounds, and there were similar injuries on her hands, suggesting she attempted to defend herself. Experts concluded that she died from a lack of oxygen. Joshua fled the city early in the morning but was stopped by a patrol officer as he headed toward the New Mexico border. The officer was unaware of his actions and arrested him based solely on his appearance, as his face was covered in cuts, scrapes, and bruises. When asked about his injuries, Joshua claimed that he had been attacked in a store in Colorado Springs. However, when the patrol officer contacted Colorado Springs police, they discovered that Joshua was actually the suspect in Riley's murder and not the victim. Afterwards, he was arrested and brought back to the city. Currently, the pharmacy's representatives are not making any statements to the media. Police have denied permission to share information that might disrupt the ongoing investigation. The pharmacy has closed its doors and is no longer serving customers. Nearby, the community has set up a makeshift memorial for Riley, adorning it with numerous flowers, letters, and gifts from those who are grieving. Joshua admitted during his initial police interview that he was in love with Riley. He admitted to being in the break room with her but claimed that the incident was accidental. This confession led police to identify him as the person who had been near Crystal at the dumpster. Despite the evidence against him, Joshua maintained his innocence and denied obstructing the view of the security camera. Police later discovered his DNA on the murder weapon. After obtaining a court warrant to search his home, they found a black hoodie with blood and traces of DNA belonging to Riley. Joshua was charged with first-degree murder and held without bail in El Paso County, with his trial scheduled for June 2022. Riley's funeral was held on June 23, 2022. Her mother received many letters of support from classmates, pharmacy customers, and others. On November 15, 2022, Joshua pleaded not guilty to all charges at his preliminary hearing. The trial was originally scheduled to begin on March 6, 2023, but the defense requested additional time to prepare and requested that Joshua undergo a mental health evaluation to determine whether he was competent to stand trial. As a result, the trial was postponed. The evaluation later determined that Joshua was sane. He remains in custody at the El Paso County Jail, with bail set at $10 million. In late September 2023, after all attempts to postpone the trial, Joshua finally appeared in court and faced Riley's relatives. On the first day of the trial, the prosecutor explained to the jury that Joshua and Riley both worked at a pharmacy and detailed the events that took place there. The defense maintained that Joshua happened to be at the crime scene. They presented that Joshua entered the break room and found Riley lying on the floor. At that point, he was attacked by an unknown assailant, causing him to flee for safety, despite feeling guilty for leaving Riley behind. However, witness testimonies have made it clear that Joshua's account is incorrect. One of the longest testimonies came from Justin, who discovered the body and was the pharmacy manager that first contacted the police. The prosecutor's office also called Riley's mother, Courtney, to testify. She shared insights about her daughter, describing her as someone who loved to help others. Courtney mentioned that Riley had expressed concerns about Joshua's behavior on several occasions. She recalled one incident when Riley was working with Joshua in the photo services area, where he touched her inappropriately. This led Riley to speak with her supervisors, resulting in her being allowed to change her work schedule. In October 2023, after arguments from both the prosecution and defense had concluded, after an hour of deliberations, the jury reached a verdict. Joshua Johnson was convicted of first-degree murder. The judge expressed gratitude to everyone who contributed to achieving justice, especially the Colorado Springs police. After the trial, some expressed their anger toward Joshua, while others chose to remember Riley as a kind, young girl who tragically lost her life because of his actions. On the podium in the auditorium, there were 3 items: an empty vase, a bag containing 42 purple stones, and a small bouquet of sunflowers. Riley's loved ones had brought these items on purpose. The stones represented the number of wounds Riley had suffered. Each person giving a speech took a handful of stones and put them in a vase. The 9th and final speaker was her mother, Courtney. She wore a jacket with the insignia of the National Guard, where her daughter served. Despite her deep grief, Courtney spoke very strongly that she would not let Joshua, whom she called a monster, take away her love for her late daughter. People admired her for this, considering it her greatest strength. She emphasized that her daughter was never afraid to express her opinion when things were not going well and always confidently led others. At the end of her speech, Courtney placed the sunflowers in a vase containing 42 purple stones before returning to her seat. At the end of the hearing, Joshua Johnson was sentenced to life in prison. Courtney established a memorial fund in Riley's name, which provides scholarships to high school graduates. In the future, Courtney plans to organize charity events that she believes Riley would have enjoyed, including art nights, exhibitions, and run. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Sheila Vaughn Wees. Sheila Vaughn Wees was born into a loving and respectful family. However, as she grew older, she struggled to instill these values in her daughter, who became stubborn and disobedient, eventually leading to tragedy. On June 10, 1952, Neil Wees and Liz Lenore Allen welcomed their daughter, Sheila. Neil was a World War I veteran who had served in the United States Air Force, and Liz worked as an accountant. The couple had 3 children, Sheila, Bill, and Deborah, and they lived in Minneapolis. Sheila did very well in school and was an excellent student. She then went to Boston University, graduating with a master's degree in political science. After graduation, she worked at a publishing house, where she interacted with several famous people. One day, Sheila met James Mack, a well-known conductor, composer, producer, and arranger in the music industry. At that time, James had children from a previous marriage. But this did not stop him from starting a romantic relationship with Sheila. Their relationship quickly advanced, and they soon got married. After the wedding, the couple moved to a small town in the district of Foran. There, they got involved in community activities and even organized performances in their backyard. In October 1995, her daughter Lois Heather Mack was born. At 43, Sheila was overjoyed to welcome a healthy baby girl. She and her husband, James, showered Lois with love and enrolled her in a top preschool and school. However, some relatives felt that Sheila spoiled her daughter. In 2001, Sheila and James planned a vacation and bought tickets for a Mediterranean cruise, they taking Lois along. Sadly, during the trip, James suffered a serious leg injury that was not properly treated, resulting in partial paralysis. The family later filed a lawsuit against the cruise company for damages, but the legal process took more than 9 years to resolve. On July 20, 2006, the family went on a trip to Athens, where James later died in their hotel room. His death was recorded on August 6, 2006. After his death, James Maxwell was revealed, stating that his daughter Lois, Heather, would inherit $1.5 million. The relationship between Sheila and Lois was strained. Lois often displayed disruptive behavior, throwing tantrums, and even attacking her mother. Since 2008, police reports have documented 35 incidents of domestic violence in Sheila's household. Additionally, Lois often ran away from home, prompting Sheila to file a missing persons report. Friends of Sheila's have reported that she sought help from various psychologists to deal with the situation. During this challenging period, Lois was a middle school student at Oak Park and River Forest School, where her talent for dancing started to show. She generally behaved well in school, but discussions about her relationship with her mother would often lead to her becoming upset. At that time, she was dating a boy named Tommy Schaefer, who was 2 years older than her. Tommy had a history of legal issues due to minor offenses. Tommy had many friends. He was especially close to his cousin Robert Bibbs. In 2011, Sheila's family's lawsuit after James injured his leg on a cruise was settled, resulting in a court judgment awarding her family $340,000 in damages. Since James had died, the money was supposed to go to Lois as stated in his will. However, for reasons that are unclear, the judge ordered the money to be sent to Sheila, which increased the conflict between Lois and Sheila. Her resentment towards her mother grew, and she made numerous threats against Sheila. By 2013, Sheila, concerned for her safety, hired a private investigator because Lois had begun to stalk her, closely monitoring her routes, schedules, and daily routines. There was animosity between them, which made their trip to the Greek coast seem unusual. However, nothing catastrophic happened during that time. In 2014, Tommy and Lois began seeing each other more frequently. Despite Sheila's objections, the situation escalated when Lois stole Sheila's bank card at a hotel party and spent over $1,000. Her mother threatened to report Lois to the police, blaming her for many problems, including the death of her father James. Tensions rose, leading Lois and Tommy to consider a drastic solution to their problems, as Sheila was seen as an obstacle to accessing the family's finances. Despite their strained relationship, Sheila and Lois traveled to Bali together in August 2014. The mother hopes that during her 10 days here, her daughter will reconsider her feelings and stop resenting her. They stayed at the St. Regis Hotel in Bali. On the day they arrived in Bali, Lois texted Tommy, confirming that everything was going according to plan. She then stole her mother's credit card again and bought a $12,000 ticket for Tommy. He arrived on the island just 12 hours later. Meanwhile, Lois was arguing with her mother at the hotel, this time about the news of her pregnancy. Tommy then went to the hotel where Sheila and Lois were staying and got involved in the fight. He hit Sheila in the face with a metal crowbar, killing her instantly. Tommy told his cousin Robert what had happened. Lois and Tommy then put Sheila's body in a suitcase and asked a porter to leave it in a hotel lobby while they called a taxi. The taxi arrived within 10 minutes and they quickly loaded the suitcase containing Sheila's body into the trunk to leave Bali as soon as possible. However, Sheila had previously warned the hotel staff not to accept any payments made with her card without her presence, knowing that Lois often stole her cards. As a result, Lois had no money and the couple were unable to pay for their hotel room. They fled without paying the bill, leaving their passports in the hotel safe. Without these documents, they cannot go to the airport. Lois and Tommy asked the taxi driver to stop at a budget hotel called Rita Valley, which they had just passed. They left their suitcases in the taxi and asked the driver to wait 10 to 15 minutes while they checked in. However, 2 hours had passed, and the driver became impatient and went into the hotel himself, but found their room empty. Lois and Tommy had checked in there but had quickly fled. Frustrated, the taxi driver returned to his car and noticed that the suitcase was leaking a red liquid. Suspecting foul play, he called the police. When the police arrived and opened the suitcase, they discovered Sheila's body inside. Forensic experts later concluded that she had died from facial fractures that had blocked her airway. In addition, her fingers were broken and her body was covered in bruises. The heartbreaking news of Sheila's death reached her family, prompting her sister, Deborah, to begin searching online for information about the case. All she found was a photograph of a suitcase. As details of the murder were reported in the media, public interest grew. Staff at the Rita Suitcase Hotel informed police that a young couple had checked in that night without luggage. When hotel staff asked them to provide their full names for internet use, they complied, knowing that this was required. The police were quick to obtain the couple's information. Police began to go to the room the couple was staying in. Hotel staff said the room had been searched and was empty. However, the couple had secretly returned to the room because they had nowhere else to go and were exhausted. They were sleeping when police found them. Lois and Tommy were taken to the police station for questioning. They gave conflicting stories about being attacked by a gang at the St. Regis Hotel and claimed that the robbers had killed Sheila. While the couple's testimony was inconsistent, the hotel staff and taxi driver remained consistent in their tests. As a result, Lois and Tommy were arrested for murder. Lois became angry, shouting that she was innocent and demanding a lawyer from the United States. The couple appeared on public television in Indonesia, with the report filmed from the police station. Tommy covered his face with a t-shirt, while Lois smiled and smoked a cigarette. They were then transferred to Lesenpar Prison, which houses serious criminals and murderers. Sheila's body was returned home for burial. Her case attracted international attention. During the proceedings, Lois underwent several psychological evaluations, but the results were not considered in the verdict. As the investigation progressed, police discovered more details about the case and the media reported that Lois was pregnant. Then on March 17, 2015, a baby girl named Stella was born. The police allowed Lois to see her baby, but only within the confines of the prison. The baby was healthy, but had an extra finger on his left hand that required surgery to remove. At the hearing, Tommy cried as he claimed that he was defending himself against an aggressive Sheila. He said that she attacked him when she found out about Lois's pregnancy. He also said that Lois often expressed a desire to escape her difficult mother. Lois' testimony contradicted Tommy's. She said she never wanted her mother to die. During the violent fight, she even ran into the bathroom to save her mother. But her testimony was not believed. The judge was presented with evidence that showed Lois and Tommy's criminal intent. Lois had previously suggested that Tommy hire a hitman to kill Sheila and had prepared $40,000 for the purpose. Sheila's autopsy showed obvious injuries and bruises on her hands and face, indicating that Sheila had fought back in self-defense. As a result, Lois Heather Mack and Tommy Schaefer were convicted of premeditated murder. Under Indonesian law, they faced the death penalty. However, the court pardoned them. This leniency was largely due to their newborn child and the couple's deep remorse. Tommy realized the severity of his actions. Sheila's family later visited him in prison, talked to him, and expressed their grief. This interaction caused Tommy to fall into a depression. He began to hate himself and truly regret his choices. His mental state deteriorated, leading to health problems, causing him to lose 11 kilograms and look pale. In April 2015, the final court hearing concluded, and the judge announced the verdict. Lois Heather Mack was sentenced to 10 years in prison, while Tommy Schaefer received an 18-year term. The prosecution described them as ruthless criminals. However, Tommy's good behavior and expressed remorse helped him avoid a longer sentence. As they left the courtroom, Lois posed for photographers from various newspapers and, while drinking a soda that smelled of alcohol, smiled and made jokes. The only thing that troubled her was the fact that she would be released much earlier than Tommy. Meanwhile, Tommy looked at her with anger and wanted nothing to do with her, marking the end of their relationship. Lois, who avoided the death penalty and received a shorter sentence, acted provocatively in prison. She frequently took photos and videos with her friends in prison, enjoying their time together. She managed to get alcohol to drink. To earn money to buy alcohol, she sold food in the prison yard. The prison authorities allowed her to sell food, feeling sorry for her because she was a single mother, but they saw that she did not care much for her daughter, who spent her early years in terrible conditions. Tommy considered Lois a fallen person and mentally ill. One day, reporters secretly entered the prison and recorded footage of Lois having fun and dancing with friends in her cell. The footage quickly went viral on television and online, causing considerable public outrage. In response, Tommy filed a petition with the United States government, requesting that Lois be transferred from the Indonesian prison to a psychiatric hospital in the United States. In the petition, he expressed that he was not seeking sympathy but hoped that their daughter would grow up to be a good person. A year later, Tommy wrote a letter to his friends detailing how Sheila's murder was planned and carried out, and Lois's questionable actions in front of their young daughter Stella. Lois seemed to be focused only on her own gain, with no regard for Stella. The responsibility of looking after Lois' daughter Stella was eventually given to a fellow prisoner, Ashar Putra Melody Sert, who had been released. Ashar quickly adapted to life in Indonesia and married a wealthy local man. Stella was then placed in the care of the couple. The police identified Robert's involvement in Sheila's murder, leading to his quick arrest and trial in 2017. He pleaded guilty to breaking the law and being an accessory to Sheila's murder. During the trial, he revealed that in August 2014, Tommy had come to him for advice on how to carry out a murder. As a result, Robert received a 9-year prison sentence. Sheila's family was pleased with the outcome. While in prison, Lois ended her relationship with Tommy. In October 2021, Lois completed 7 years in an Indonesian prison and was paroled. Her reunion with her 6-year-old daughter, Stella, was a moment of liberation for her. Stella lived in Indonesia for another month before being extradited to the United States with her mother. At that point, her daughter no longer needed a guardian. Upon arriving in Chicago, Lois was arrested at the airport by FBI agents. She faced new charges of conspiracy to murder a U.S. citizen abroad and obstruction of justice. Lois attempted to draw media attention to her arrest, believing it was unfair, especially since she had already served time in Indonesia. She felt it was unfair that the police had brought new charges against her. At her first court appearance in the United States, Lois denied all charges against her. Her attorney, Keith Vogel-Barova, argued for her to be released on bail. In response, District Judge Charnell agreed to consider the appeal and heard from Assistant District Attorney Terry Keeney. The court needed a reasonable amount of time to make a decision. A week later, Lois reached a plea deal with police and pleaded guilty to conspiracy to murder U.S. citizen abroad. A hearing then took place in Illinois federal court. District Judge Matthew Kelly considered the prosecution's recommendation for a 28-year prison sentence, minus 7 years for time served in Indonesia. The judge then sentenced Lois Heather Mack to 26 years in prison, ordered her to pay $2,278 in restitution, and fined her $50,000. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Sisette Abigail. Sisette Abigail was born in 1996 in Mexico. At 21, she met Luis Alfonso Alvarez Lopez, a 31-year-old man, also from Mexico. They eventually decided to live together in an apartment located in Building 27 on Paseo de la Reforma, in Colonia Tabacalera, Cuauhtémoc District, Mexico City, where Luis worked as the building administrator. Luis is a con artist, especially targeting women. He used deception to manipulate women into giving him money. While some considered him attractive, his true skill lay in his ability to manipulate others. He often fabricated tragic stories about his family to gain sympathy and achieve his goals. In one case, he swindled about $6,000 from a young woman by claiming his brother had been kidnapped by a group. In another instance, he convinced a girlfriend that he wanted to marry her and asked for money to buy an apartment where they would live together. However, he never purchased the apartment, disappeared with her savings, and the wedding never occurred, despite her having an engagement ring. Luis pulled off one of the most daring scams by faking his own death 3 times, earning him the nickname the Lord of Swindles. These incidents took place in 2016. The first incident occurred on May 19, when he circulated his photo, shows that he was one of the victims of the Egyptair Flight 804 crash. The second fake death happened on June 12, during the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, Florida. The third incident occurred on June 28, when another social media user shared his photo, claiming he was their brother, who had gone missing after the Istanbul airport attack in Turkey. Following these incidents, Luis' image went viral on social media and was picked up by international media. Days after Luis' third fake death, French media began investigating the situation. They were curious about how the same photo appeared in 3 separate tragedies and whether Luis himself was behind the posts or if someone else was responsible. It was revealed that Luis did not post his photo online. Instead, individuals to whom he owed money shared it. These people accused him of being a fraud and tried to ruin his reputation, they portraying him as a liar. French media contacted some of them, and one explained how Luis had manipulated others. On May 19, when the Egyptair plane disappeared into the sea, a user on a social network shared Luis' photo, claiming it was their brother, Luis, who had been on the plane. This misinformation somehow reached the BBC. The BBC later published this information. However, the following day, after verifying the passenger list and realizing the error, the BBC retracted the story. One victim of Luis said she sued him for fraud, but she never got her money back. Frustrated, she decided to post his photo online so that everyone would recognize him as a scammer. Concerning the nightclub attack in Orlando, a reputable newspaper edited a video to show Luis as one of the victims. The newspaper also reported that the incident may have been an attempt to frame him. A French TV station managed to interview Luis, giving him a chance to defend himself. During the interview, he admitted that he had unresolved fraud cases in Mexico. However, he explained that he had not filed complaints against those who shared his photo because news in Mexico was of little importance to him and did not affect him. Through these incidents, Luis managed to win over Sisette, just as he had charmed other women. He persuaded her to move in with him. She was very happy because this was the first time she lived with a man, and she believed he would become her lifelong partner. However, things did not go as she had hoped. Initially, everything seemed fine, but over time, Luis revealed his controlling behavior. He prohibited she from having friends and prevented her from contacting her family or colleagues. He forbade her from working and essentially kept her confined at home. Her only role was to assist him with some administrative tasks related to the building. Beyond that, she had no interaction with anyone else. This isolation led to frequent arguments. Over time, the situation got worse, and Luis abused her. The tragedy began on Friday, September 18, 2020. Sisette spoke to her parents for the last time, promising to join them for lunch on Sunday, September 20th. However, she never showed up. She stopped responding to calls or messages, which deeply worried her parents. They reached out to Luis, but he claimed he didn't know her whereabouts. He explained that they had argued because he had gone to visit his mother in Tala without taking Sisette along. Even when relatives visited Luis' home, he insisted she wasn't there. Although concerned, but Sisette's parents initially believed Luis. However, they found it very unusual that she had left without informing anyone, and they couldn't reach her. Their calls went straight to voicemail. It became clear over time that her phone had been turned off. Extremely desperate, her family began searching for her by contacting friends and colleagues. Former colleagues and others have posted her photo on social media, appealing for information to help find her. Sadly, the search yielded no results, and it seemed as though she had vanished without a trace. Left with no other choice, her parents decided to ask the police for help. When Luis learned that Sisette's parents were filing a complaint, he didn't object, but refused to go with them, saying he needed to take his dog to the vet. This confused Sisette's mother, who could not understand why he was so indifferent to the disappearance of Sisette, the woman he always claimed to love. Others also began to suspect him. During police questioning, Luis stated that at the time of Sisette's disappearance, he was in Tala with his mother. While he had an alibi, the police were struck by his lack of concern over Sisette's situation. On September 25, 2020, the Prosecutor General's office ordered a search for Sisette, who is still missing. Investigators, along with her family, spent 3 weeks searching, checking morgues and other locations, but found no clues. Eventually, they decided to return to the building where Sisette lived with Luis to conduct a more detailed search. On October 9th, Sisette's body was found wrapped in a sheet, lying inside the same building where she lived with Luis, at apartment number 1006. Initially, there were no visible signs of a struggle in the room, no blood or evidence of a fight. However, when investigators used luminol, it became apparent that this was the crime scene. They uncovered numerous bloodstains that had been cleaned up. The stains trailed from the main room to the bathroom, suggesting the body had been dragged between rooms. A large cleaned-up pool of blood was also found. Based on this evidence, a murder investigation was launched. Sisette's body was sent to a medical facility for further examination. The results showed that she had been brutally beaten all over her body. The cause of death was determined to be strangulation. Luis became the primary suspect in the case, because he was the last person to see Sisette alive. He had reason to hide her body in the building, as he was the manager of the place, and their strained relationship made the motive all the more obvious. The police began searching other apartments in the building, including the apartment where Luis lives. There, they discovered some of Sisette's belongings, along with a significant quantity of illegal substances. Luis was discovered to be in possession of 50 bags of illegal drugs, along with 11 bank cards and an identity card. DNA tests and fingerprint analysis were conducted to determine whether Louise had been in the apartment where Cezet's body was discovered. DNA analysis from the crime scene confirmed traces of both Louise and Cezet, and his fingerprints were also found on her body. Investigation agency in Mexico City have issued an arrest warrant for Luis. At that time, he was in prison for possession of illegal drugs. During a hearing for the drug charges, Judge Landarange granted Luis conditional release, requiring him to post bail and report every 15 days. However, during the same hearing, the Bureau of Investigation issued a warrant for his arrest for Cezet's murder. Judge Hector Fernando Rojo San Pacheco issued the warrant, and Luis was arrested again. This time, he was transferred to the Eastern Detention Center, where he will be held until his trial for the Cezet murder case takes place. The hearing was delayed due to Luis' health issues. However, on November 8, he was officially charged with murder. The court accepted all the evidence presented by the prosecutor, identified him as involved in the crime, and confirmed his pre-trial detention as a precautionary measure. Furthermore, a 2.5-month deadline has been set to complete the further investigation. This information was widely spread, and details about his past as the Lord of Swindles began to be made public. A photo of him began to be distributed, prompting many acquaintances to share what they knew about him. One of these individuals was Luis' ex-girlfriend, Anna. She said they met online in 2010 but only met in person in 2012. She claimed to have witnessed numerous fraudulent schemes he orchestrated to deceive people. She explained that his scams had enabled him to live a lavish lifestyle, allowing him to afford a luxury apartment and car. He often flaunted his wealth to impress his friends. Despite his efforts to mingle with wealthy individuals, he was looked down upon. According to Anna, he had been involved in scams since he was 18. Him telling her how he began by posting fake ads for mobile phones online, tricking people into paying without ever delivering the products. Anna explained that Luis had deceived many people using various methods. He told her that his father had passed away and left him a company, but she later discovered this was a lie. She claimed to have seen his phone and saw him chatting with many people using fake names. Additionally, she revealed that he was cruel to animals, such as attaching rockets to cats and burning dogs. Anna claimed that Luis stayed at her house for a while after undergoing plastic surgery, during which her dog, Bruno, was often with him. She recounted coming home on several occasions to find her dog frightened and limping. Once, she noticed her dog had urinated on the bed, something he had never done before. She also observed that the dog could not walk properly, was struggling to breathe, and had a broken back leg. She immediately suspected Luis, but he denied harming the dog. However, a veterinarian later confirmed that these injuries were caused by abusive behavior. In Anna's view, Luis' cruelty to animals was what eventually led him to start abusing people. She said that while they were still together, she to suspect that he was showing signs of mental illness and was convinced that he was responsible for Cezet's death. Although authorities had enough evidence to show that Luis was the one who killed Cezet, her family and friends had to wait nearly 3 years to see justice served. His legal team used various tactics to delay the trial. During this time, Cezet's parents actively participated in rallies demanding justice. Finally, on April 28, 2023, the Supreme Court of Mexico found Luis Alfonso Alvarez Lopez guilty of murder. He was sentenced to 39 years, 4 months, and 15 days in prison. Although he was only sentenced to a minimum of 39 years in prison, while the maximum sentence could have been up to 70 years, but Cezet's parents felt that the result was fair and they were satisfied with it. Finally, after a long process, justice has been served. Luis is now in prison. This can be considered the best outcome, considering the dangers he has caused to society. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Laura Conley. On March 15, 1978, in the United States, a girl named Laura was born. She was the third child of Carlene and James. Laura is very close to her sisters, and her parents always love and care for their children with all their heart. However, everything changed when Carlene and James divorced. At that time, Laura was still a teenager, and her parents' divorce affected her very much. During her difficult times, she turned to alcohol and then became addicted to psychotropic substances. Her mother, Carlene, believed these issues stemmed from the divorce and blamed herself for her struggles. Carlene was born on June 13, 1945, in Virginia. Her 3 daughters are always her number one priority, and she feels responsible for everything that happens to them. She feels guilty because her divorce has affected Laura, her youngest daughter. This guilt causes she to seek to justify Laura's actions. As a mother, she was always supportive and tried to help Laura through her challenges. However, other family members and acquaintances often found Laura irritable and always wanting attention. Even though 20 years have passed since Laura's parents divorced, when her 2 older sisters were married and living on their own, she continued to live in the family home. She was unemployed and continued to demand attention from her mother, Carlene. At one point, Laura has a boyfriend, and he moves in with her and her mother, Carlene. Laura believed she was mentally ill and repeatedly sought medical help to be prescribed psychotropic medication. Eventually, medical professionals stopped prescribing these medications to her. Because of craving for psychotropic drugs, she begins sneaking into neighbors' houses to steal any pills she can find. She also took advantage of her mother's kindness, repeatedly calling her mother at work and bothering her for various reasons. This eventually forced her mother to quit her job. In 2008, Laura was convicted of a minor shoplifting offense, but was quickly released after her mother, Carlene, posted bail for her. Unfortunately, the situation only worsened. At first she just scolded her mother, but gradually she started abusing her mother. Despite being hurt, but Carlene did not want to report her daughter to the authorities or have her thrown out of the house. On one occasion, after a violent incident, specialists were called to assess Laura's mental health. Even then, Carlene allowed Laura to return home, believing it was her duty as a mother to care for her. Laura's anger is not only directed at her mother but also at her boyfriend, Chris Lewin. She was taken to court twice for attacking him. One incident occurred in late October 2014, when she woke he from his sleep and accused him of cheating. Their argument quickly turned into violence. During the scuffle, she bit he and used a kitchen knife, causing a minor wound to his arm. This incident resulted in Laura being charged with a misdemeanor and she having to attend anger management therapy. Even though she was over 35 years old at that time, her behavior remained unchanged. A few months later, on January 7, 2015, Laura was arrested again. This time, she bit Chris's finger when he tried to stop her from attacking Carlene. He cannot understand why she resents her mother, Carlene, so much. Carlene always wholeheartedly took care of her 3 daughters and 5 grandchildren, whom she cherished deeply. Carlene tried her best to take care of Laura, providing everything she thought could help Laura overcome her problems. Sadly, despite Carlene's unconditional love and good intentions, Laura's cruel actions towards her were not stopped. On March 14, 2015, Laura called 911 to report an incident at her mother Carlene's home. She told the operator that there had been a home invasion and that her mother had been fatally shot. Officers from the Independence, Taylor Mill, and Covington police departments quickly arrived at the scene and were met with a gruesome sight. Laura was covered in blood. And Carlene, a 69-year-old woman, was lying on the kitchen counter, barely alive and suffering from multiple stab wounds. When police questioned Laura about what had happened, she claimed she couldn't remember. saying she had lost consciousness. However, she mentioned that, 2 hours earlier, a group of people knocked on the door asking for candy, a common occurrence during Halloween, despite Halloween being months away. She gave police various descriptions of the suspects, prompting authorities to launch a search. Police set up a cordon in the area, but no one matching Lara's descriptions was found. To further investigate, the police brought Lara to the station for questioning. During the interrogation, she shared additional details about the assailants, but also introduced inconsistencies. For example, she believes she was targeted because she has not paid the drug dealers. She later gave contradictory accounts of how she discovered Carlene's body. She initially said that when she got home, she found Carlene dead. She later said she slept in the basement, and after waking up and going upstairs, she saw Carlene's body lying on the kitchen floor. Hours after the investigation began, detectives Mike Richmond and Jim Moore from the Independence Police Department quickly identified Lara as being involved in the case. It became clear that she had lied to the police about what happened. Evidence showed that there was no break-in, and no fingerprints were found on the doors or windows. This led investigators to conclude that Lara was the only person in the house when her mother, Carlene, was murdered. Early on the morning of Sunday, March 15th, Lara's 37th birthday, authorities arrested her for the murder of Carlene. The following day, Monday, March 16th, Lara appeared in court via video link. She asserted that she was not guilty. However, she was detained without bail and sent to county jail, facing charges of murder and domestic violence. The court also prohibited her from having any contact with her boyfriend, Chris. Prosecutor Rob Sanders said Carlene's murder had come as a huge shock to local residents, as their area was known for its safety and low crime rates. He stressed that the case was still under investigation and admitted that it was still unclear what had happened. He also said that the reason why Lara committed such a serious crime would soon be clarified. The forensic report revealed the brutal nature of the attack. An autopsy showed that Carlene had been stabbed 77 times. She also had 27 defensive wounds and 2 bite marks. On March 24th, Lara appeared before a judge. She explained that she had no money, making her unable to afford a lawyer. In response, the judge assigned her a public defender and proceeded with the hearing. During the court proceedings, Detective Michael Richmond testified that there was no evidence of forced entry. He stated that Lara herself had opened the door to let the police in, and at the time of the incident, only she and Carlene were at home. Detectives reported that inside the home, they found Carlene on the kitchen floor, surrounded by several knives. He also reported that when they saw Lara, she was covered in blood, which was found on her shirt, arms, legs, face, and even on her lips and nose. After reviewing police testimony, the judge sent the case to the jury. On April 16, 2015, Lara Conley was formally charged with the murder of her mother, Carlene Conley. During the trial, the jury heard testimony from approximately 50 witnesses. The prosecution bolstered its case with testimony from police officers involved in the investigation and members of Carlene's family. The defense argued that Lara acted in self-defense. According to her lawyer, the stabbing incident happened due to stress when she was attacked by Carlene. When Lara testified, she told the jury that she and Carlene had been arguing about how she usually celebrated her birthday. During the argument, Carlene picked up a heavy object and struck her on the head. Lara claimed she could not remember anything that happened after being hit, including the 911 call she made. The jury was told that after the crime, when Lara was given a medical examination, experts confirmed that she had cuts on her head and back, along with bruises on her body and a hematoma under her eye. On March 23, 2017, the defense and prosecutors presented their closing arguments. Assistant District Attorney Lawrence presented the evidence to the jury and emphasized the inconsistencies and unverified claims in Lara's defense. That same day, after 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found Lara Conley guilty of first-degree murder and recommended a sentence of 27 years in prison. Before the sentencing, Carlene's relatives submitted statements about Lara's influence on Carlene. Virginia, a daughter of Carlene and is Lara's biological sister, described her younger sister as extremely evil and sick. One of Virginia's daughters also criticized Lara harshly. Judge Leake sentenced Lara to 27 years in prison, as recommended by the jury. Another of Carlene's daughters commented that Lara was strange and denied accusations that their mother was cruel. She insisted their mother was not responsible for the conflict, denied allegations that their mother had ever harmed Lara. Lara's defense later filed a motion for a new trial. Lawyers argued that the sentence was invalid because Lara was not given the funds to hire a psychologist who could assess and confirm her mental health conditions, which included issues such as bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. The defense also claimed that, leading up to the incident, Lara had consumed excessive alcohol, along with a nausea medication meant to induce drowsiness. Despite this, she reportedly had not slept for 4 to 5 days. However, the judge dismissed the appeal, rejecting these arguments, and ordered a court-appointed assessment of Lara by mental health experts. After reviewing the experts' report, the court ultimately overturned its initial decision. It was determined that Lara had the right to an independent expert. Additionally, the defense argued for the cancellation of the preliminary trial and called for a new trial, claiming that a mistake had led to Lara being found guilty. The prosecutor's office was permitted to present evidence of a previous attack committed by Lara. In June 2019, the Kent Supreme Court ruled that the trial court had made an error. The decision quashed Lara's 27-year prison sentence and ordered a new trial. However, despite winning the right to a new trial, Lara chose to avoid the retrial and instead signed a plea agreement. This reduced her sentence to 20 years, and she will become eligible for parole in 2032. Lara is currently being held at the Women's Correctional Facility in Kent. For Carlene's loved ones, Lara's conviction marked the end of the legal process, but it did not heal the pain. Their family will never be the same. Carlene's 2 daughters had to continue their lives without their mother's comforting words and warm embrace. The fact that a family member was responsible for Carlene's tragic death makes this story even more heartbreaking. Lara killed her own mother and has shown no remorse for her actions.